Chapter 1005. No matter how unreconciled he was, his head had already fallen to the ground. Then this matter ended just like that. As for Qiu Ruhan, she was a little resentful because she stood up and exposed Lung Ao. But it seemed like she didn't receive any reward. The Devil Queen waved her hand, and all the evil warriors immediately dispersed. As for Lung Ao's corpse, someone had to clean it up or cremate it. The Devil Queen said indifferently, "Don't waste it. There's still some energy left. Use it to create the world-exterminating army." Dongli was slightly stunned, then said, "Yes." The Devil Queen said to Dishi Bian, "All right, this matter has been resolved. Now, let's discuss the matter of the undead army entering the human countries." Dishi Bian said, "There are 3 prerequisites for the undead army to enter the human countries." The Devil Queen said, "Please speak." Dishi Bian said, "Because this war is long-term, and under the 2 suns, the energy of the undead will constantly dissipate. So we have to build a huge ghost city in the human world." The Devil Queen was shocked and said, "Ghost city in the human world?" Dishi Bian said, "Of course, you don't have to build this ghost city in the human world. As long as you teleport a large number of Shura to the human countries, they will build a huge ghost city in the human world underground. During the day, countless undead army can hide in the ghost city in the underground. At night, countless undead can instantly drown the cities of the human countries." The Devil Queen said, "Please continue." Dishi Bian said, "There are 2 energy mediums, one yin and one yang. Of course, I am the yin energy medium, and the yang energy medium is Wolingzi. He also has a part of the netherworld ghost fire in his body, and has an undying body. He can travel between the netherworld kingdom and the human countries." The Devil Queen frowned and said, "Of course, there's no problem with that." Dishi Bian said, "When the time comes, I'll act as the medium of yin energy, and I'll be in the underworld empire. As a medium of yang energy, Wolingzi would be in the human countries." It was through this method that countless undead were transported from the netherworld kingdom to the human kingdom. Queen Devil Queen asked, "What's the 3rd condition?" Dishi Bian replied, "Of course it's the celestial spirit master Shura Vulture. She needs to continuously summon countless undead to the human kingdoms." Queen Devil Queen said, "We can fulfill all 3 conditions, can't we?" Dishi Bian said, "Wolingzi, as the energy bridge in the human countries, he needs to break through to the saint level. He needs to have the same cultivation level as me. Furthermore, he needed an immortal body. That's because countless undead passed through his body. Without evil spirit energy, it's impossible to resist." Queen Devil Queen's expression changed slightly. Wolingzi's reputation in the Temple of Annihilation was very, very bad. He was seen as a useless person, a coward, a traitor, and so on. He had betrayed the evil ways in the previous Great War of Destruction, and in the previous Great War of the Empire of Darkness. Because he was afraid of the Naga Shuang, he ran away at the last moment. Therefore, the Temple of Annihilation had always been unwilling to give him evil spirit energy. Although he was a half-step saint, his status in the evil ways was very low. Moreover, when he was imprisoned for nearly a month, no one cared about him. Even his own daughter, Vulture, treated him as if he was dead. Therefore, Wolingzi could be considered the lowest person in the evil ways. Now, if he broke through to the saint level, and had evil spirit energy in him, this meant that he would become the 4th saint level expert in the evil ways. Moreover, with the evil spirit energy and the netherworld ghost flame, he would be unstoppable. Of course, as the master who gave him the evil spirit, he could take it away. But at the very least, he had to suppress him in terms of cultivation to be able to take away the evil spirit in his body. It was impossible to take away the evil spirit directly from the evil spirit tree. If Wolingzi betrayed the evil ways again, the consequences would be unimaginable. The Infernal Queen's dead princess said, "Is there no other way? We really don't want Wolingzi to become a saint-level expert, and we don't want him to have evil spirit energy. That way he might be unstoppable." Dishi Bian said, "Then you have to find someone else who has the netherworld ghost flame. Ouyang Dingtian has a complete netherworld ghost flame. You can try him." Queen Devil Queen frowned. When Dishi Bian faced her, he didn't have much respect. Slowly closing her beautiful eyes, Queen Devil Queen said to Shura Vulture, "Vulture, what do you think?" Shura Vulture said, "I don't know, but I don't want him to become a saint-level expert, and I don't want him to have evil spirit energy." "Why?" Queen Devil Queen asked. Shura Vulture said, "Because he betrayed me. I don't want anyone to surpass me in status, and I don't want anyone to climb over my head, including my father." Queen Devil Queen pursed her lips. Shura Vulture was such a selfish person. After thinking for a while, Queen Devil Queen nodded, and then said to Princess Mudan, "You just gave that person a second-class evil spirit. He is destined to be happy for nothing." "It doesn't matter," Princess Mudan said. Prince Li Ming suddenly frowned and said, "Your Majesty Devil Queen, are you really going to give Wolingzi evil spirit energy?" Queen Devil Queen said, "What? You don't want to?" Prince Li Ming said, "I think that once Wolingzi loses his fear, it will be a very scary thing." Queen Devil Queen said, "If I don't give Wolingzi evil spirit energy, then what do you think should be done? How should the Second World Extermination Battle be carried out?" Prince Li Ming said, "Everything will be done when His Majesty Demon King returns." Queen Devil Queen's expression changed dramatically and said, "Li Ming, what do you mean? Are you accusing me of incompetence?" Li Ming doesn't dare. Prince Li Ming said. Queen Devil Queen said, "That's good. His Majesty Demon King isn't here. I am the supreme leader of the entire Empire of Darkness." After saying that, Queen Devil Queen directly walked towards Wolingzi's residence. Prince Li Ming said, "Your Majesty Devil Queen, if you want to give Wolingzi evil spirit energy, you must completely cut off the possibility of Wolingzi relying on Yang Dingtian." Queen Devil Queen sneered. "Are you kidding? Wolingzi and Yang Dingtian's hatred is as deep as the sea. He can rely on anyone, but he can't rely on Yang Dingtian. Even in his most desperate times, he didn't rely on Yang Dingtian." Prince Li Ming said, "Just in case, please give Wolingzi a condition. Let him kill one of Yang Dingtian's relatives. After the hatred between the two is completely irreconcilable, then give him evil spirit energy." As soon as this was said, Shura Vulture's expression changed dramatically. If this was really done, not only would Wolingzi and Yang Dingtian be irreconcilable, but even Shura Vulture and Yang Dingtian would have no possibility of reuniting. Because no matter what, Wolingzi was Vulture's biological father. The infernal queen undead concubine glanced at the Azura spirit Vulture and frowned slightly. Dongli said, "I also agree. Once Wu Lingzi is allowed to kill one of Yang Dingtian's relatives, he will definitely be killed. Then, not only will Wu Lingzi have no way out, even Vulture will have no way out." Suddenly, Shura Vulture wanted to tear Dongli into pieces and grind his bones to dust. Queen Devil Queen smiled and said, "Although I don't think it's necessary, I accept your proposal." Then he said to Vulture, "Come with me. Let's go see your father together." At this time, Wolingzi was playing chess with Duga Xiao. From the beginning, the two of them were like superfluous people in the Empire of Darkness. Duga Xiao did not betray the evil ways, but he was unwilling to accept the evil spirit energy. On the other hand, Wu Lingzi was despised and ostracized. Of course, although Duga Xiao was also ostracized, he was the father of the Naga Duga Shuang in name, and he was the one who actively rejected the evil spirit energy. Therefore, most of the evil warriors were puzzled and full of respect for him. As for Wu Lingzi, it was a complete and naked disdain, a complete ostracism. A person who had lived for more than 200 years was actually so cowardly that he even betrayed his own daughter to Yang Dingtian. Moreover, when Yang Dingtian's cultivation was not yet at the great grandmaster level, the dignified half-saint Wolingzi had been toyed with by Yang Dingtian. In the previous battle with Naga, this half-step saint expert had fled in defeat. They had never seen such a cowardly and incompetent person. Therefore, almost everyone in the Empire of Darkness could not wait to look at him with disdain. Even the servants of the Empire of Darkness did not take him seriously at all. In fact, if not for his daughter being the Shura Vulture, Wolingzi might have died, or even been thrown into the refining array as an energy material for the Legion of Doom. It could be said that all the humiliation Wuxia had suffered in his life could not be compared to the humiliation he had suffered in the past few months in the Empire of Darkness. The only one who did not humiliate him was Duguxiao. In fact, Duguxiao did not show any attitude towards him. After Wuxia regained his freedom, because no one was willing to talk to him, he tried to communicate with Duguxiao. In the end, Duguxiao did not say anything and only took out a game of Go. Wuxia did not know how to play, so Duguxiao taught him the rules. Then almost all the time, these two extra people kept playing Go. Wuxia's Go skills were terrible, while Duguxiao's Go skills were amazing. Therefore, he was completely tortured playing Go with Wuxia. However, the two of them kept playing like this. Of course, during the whole process, Duguxiao did not have any verbal communication with Wuxia. It was just a game of Go. After Queen Devil Queen and Shura Vulture entered this simple stone room, Duguxiao frowned slightly, then got up and left directly without saying anything. Wuxia hesitated for a moment, then knelt down and said, "Old slave Wuxia greets your majesty Devil Queen." Queen Devil Queen said, "Wuxia, 200 years ago at the last moment, you betrayed the evil ways, right?" Wuxia suddenly trembled, kowtowed and said, "Old slave deserves 10,000 deaths." Queen Devil Queen said, "What about now? Will you betray the evil ways at the last moment?" Wuxia was silent for a moment, then said, "Old slave, who can I betray now? Looking around, almost everyone is an enemy." Queen Devil Queen smiled and said, "This sentence is not wrong." Then, Queen Devil Queen said, "What if we give you a chance to promote you from the superfluous people of the Empire of Darkness to the top level? Let you break through to the saint-level powerhouse. Let you have evil energy, and be immortal forever. What will you do?" Suddenly, Wuxia completely lost his reaction, as if he had been struck by lightning. After a long time his voice was hoarse. No, this is impossible. If not for the vulture, this old life of mine would have died long ago, and the temple would have no place for me." Queen Devil Queen said, "I only ask you, if you have this chance, what will you do?" Wuxia knelt down deeply and said, "I will do my best until my death." Queen Devil Queen said, "Well, I will tell you officially. We will bestow you with a second-class evil spirit, so that you will be immortal. There is no need to be so greedy for life and afraid of death. Then, we will send you to the Underworld Empire, and use countless undead energy essences to help you break through to the saint level." Wuxia's body was trembling non-stop. He tried to suppress it with all his might, but he was completely unable to. Queen Devil Queen said, "I know you are very excited, but if you want to have a second-class evil spirit and have a saint-level cultivation, there is still a condition." Wuxia bowed and said, "Devil Queen, please give the order." Queen Devil Queen said, "Kill one of Yang Dingtian's relatives to cut off any path of retreat for you." Wuxia suddenly trembled. "What, are you unwilling?" Queen Devil Queen said. Wuxia said, "The old slave is just very strange. Yang Dingtian is my biggest enemy in this world. Moreover, how can the old slave have a way out?" Then Wuxia said, "May I ask, what is the concept of Yang Dingtian's relatives? Does Dongfang Minmi count?" "No," Prince Li Ming said outside. "It is either Yang Dingtian's wife, or his children. Dongfang Minmi, his master's wife, his mother-in-law, none of them count." Wuxia frowned and said, "But I heard that his wife and children are no longer in Cloud Sky City, so it's not easy to find them. If it is his mother-in-law, master's wife, or even Dongfang Minmi, it will be much easier to kill." Shura Vulture finally couldn't help but say, "If you touch the people around Yang Dingtian, you will touch the bottom line. Without the decree of His Majesty the Demon King, no one can touch this bottom line." Dongli sneered and said, "Vulture, your heart is indeed on Yang Dingtian's side." Prince Li Ming said slowly, "Yes, this is the bottom line. But this is a special moment. Your father's loyalty is too important." The Infernal Queen's dead princess said, "It's decided then. Mu Dan, give Wuxia a second-class evil spirit, and let him have an immortal body. After he completes the mission and returns, let him break through to the saint level." "Yes," Princess Mu Dan said. "No, I don't agree. Shura Vulture shouted. Wolingzi will definitely betray you. Don't give him the evil spirit energy, don't send him out. Dongli sneered and said, You don't want him to kill Yang Dingtian's children. This will cut off your escape route. 2 hours later, Wolingzi, who had a second-class evil spirit and was officially immortal, flew out of the Empire of Darkness under the guidance of the magic wand and flew towards the human kingdom. Queen Devil Queen said, Complete the mission within 3 days. I will wait for you here. Yes, Wolingzi said and then flew towards the south. He said coldly in his heart, Dead princess, I will definitely not let you down he. Chapter 1006. After killing Lung Ao, Mu Dan bestowed a second great evil spirit to a third great evil spirit, and that person became the luckiest person. However, his surprise only lasted for less than half a day. This second great evil spirit was bestowed to Wolingzi. When he possessed a second great evil spirit, Wolingzi entered a very, very strange feeling. His desire for evil spirit energy exceeded anyone else's. Because he had the netherworld ghost fire, he was immortal. However, he could be killed. Therefore, he became especially greedy for life and afraid of death. As for the evil spirits, they became extremely thirsty. It was also for this reason that the people of evil ways were unwilling to give him evil spirits. In the end, because of the pressure of reality, the Queen Devil Queen had no choice but to give him evil spirits. Even though it was only a second great evil spirit. Of course, a second great evil spirit did not allow him to break through to the saint level, but it did greatly improve his cultivation. At that moment, Wolingzi even felt like he had been reborn. This meant that he had truly become an immortal. The thing that he had pursued for 200 years was finally in his hands. He finally let go of his courage and abandoned his previous cowardice and incompetence. So the moment he obtained the evil spirit, was he excited? Excited. However, there was no very, very strong sense of happiness. Instead, there was a kind of emptiness. When he obtained something that he had pursued for too long, there would indeed be a surge of emptiness, as if he had suddenly lost the goal to strive for. Then, was he grateful to the Queen Devil Queen? No. In fact, he was filled with ridicule and resentment. Evil ways had trampled him under their feet again and again, making him lose all his dignity. This time, if it wasn't for the fact that they had no choice, evil ways wouldn't have given him a second great evil spirit. Therefore, he didn't have the slightest bit of gratitude, only ridicule. Wolingzi's destination was the southern barbarian continent. The mission given to him by the Queen Devil Queen was to kill Yang Dingtian's immediate family, his children, or his wife. Yang Dingtian's children and wife had all gone into hiding. It would be difficult to find him within 3 days. Moreover, perhaps Yang Dingtian's children were protected by saint-level experts. Therefore, Wolingzi was unwilling to take this risk. However, it was said that Yang Dingtian's wife, Huang Yu and daughter Yang Wu, did not live in the Valley of Cloud Heaven City. They spent most of their time in the southern barbarian continent with the surviving half-human race. The little princess of the Foxman race, Xiang, was also in the southern barbarian continent. As long as one of them was in the southern barbarian continent, it would be enough. Very quickly, Wolingzi arrived above the southern barbarian continent. As far as the eye could see, construction was going on everywhere. The Doomsday Battle had only ended a few days ago. Countless people in the southern barbarian continent could not wait to start rebuilding. Of course, it could not be considered rebuilding. Although the southern barbarian continent was also attacked by the Dark Dragon race, countless cities and castles were not built. Therefore, it could be considered as continuing construction. The people here, regardless of whether they were half-human race or humans, all had energetic smiles on their faces. This place was full of vitality. When the southern barbarian continent was under the rule of the Vulture Palace, it should have been hell. Countless savages were captured and became food for the black vultures. The entire southern barbarian continent was filled with terrifying killings. At this moment, the savages could still be seen. However, their hair had been cut, and their clothes had been put on. If it wasn't for their facial features being different from normal humans, Wolingzi wouldn't have been able to recognize them. This group of savages was also carrying wood and rocks in full swing. Although most of the savages could not speak the human language, they could still carry out the most basic communication through laughing and gesticulating. As the savages had low requirements for survival, they were the most satisfied race now. This was because all the savages no longer had to worry about not having enough to eat. They no longer had to worry about being hunted by the people of the Vulture Palace. All the savages were safe and could eat delicacies that they had never dreamed of before. As for carrying wood and stones, it was the easiest job for them. In fact, the barbarian race had other rights, such as entering schools, joining the army of the Council of Light, and even entering the Heavenly Edict Academy. However, these rights were still insignificant to the barbarian race. They only cared about one thing at the moment, which was whether they had good food to eat, and whether they could fill their stomachs. Wuxia found a secluded place to hide from the winged cavalry of the southern barbarian continent, and landed on the ground. Then, he walked on the road with caution and disdain. He was cautious because he was born to be wary of the Council of Light. He was disdainful because his cultivation was powerful, and he had the power of the evil spirit. So he was not afraid of anyone. In the end, no matter if it was the half-human race, the humans, or the barbarian race, they all greeted him with respect. Almost everyone's first reaction when they saw him was to smile, bow, make way for him, and wait for him to pass. Unexpectedly, everyone made way for him. Even the soldiers of the Council of Light. Wuxia was stunned. Why was this? Why did everyone have to bow to him and make way for him? Could it be that he looked like a big shot from the Council of Light after his disguise? But soon, he knew that he was wrong. This was because he saw a second white-haired elder. When he walked on the road, everyone bowed to him and made way for him. Instantly, Wuxia's heart trembled slightly, and an indescribable emotion welled up in him. Unexpectedly, all of the elders were able to enjoy this treatment. It was important to know that regardless of whether it was the half-human race, the barbarian race, or even the human countries, ordinary civilians would become a burden once they got older. If their children were not filial, it would be difficult for them to survive. Even if their children were more filial, it would be difficult for an ordinary civilian family to support an elder who did not work. Therefore, the elderly had to do hard work all the time. In fact, they had to work even harder, because their productivity was already very low. Therefore, in the previous world, getting older meant being abandoned. And now, these elders were actually being treated in such a manner. Then Wuxia entered a town. He saw many white-haired elders. Some were taking care of children, some were tending to the vegetable garden, and even more were gathered together to chat, play chess, or even play cards. The simple park in this town was not completed yet. There were only a few simple stone tables, but now it was surrounded by people, all of whom were elderly. On every table, there were people playing chess and cards, surrounded by a group of people. Wuxia went up and found that some were playing chess, some were playing Go, and some were playing mahjong. There were even poker cards. He knew that these games were invented by Yang Dingtian. He thought that these games were only for the higher-ups of the Council of Light. He did not expect that even the people of the southern barbarian continent knew how to play them. Was he not afraid that the people would lose their minds? He was also good at Go, but his level was too bad. If he played 10 games with Duga Xiao, he would lose all 10 games. This time, he happened to see a few tables playing Go, and the elders playing Go were dressed decently. Obviously, they had some status. Although Wuxia had important matters to attend to, he could not help but be excited and went up to watch them play. It didn't matter if he just looked at it, but in less than a quarter of an hour, his heart was itching to read it. The chess skills of this group of people were simply too lousy. In less than a quarter of an hour, who knew how many times he had made a mistake? If he went up, he could definitely kill them all. Wuxia realized that it was not his Go skills that were too bad, but Duga Xiao's Go skills were too godly. As a chess noob, he had been playing chess with Duga Xiao every day, and his chess skills had improved tremendously. Finally, after another 15 minutes, Wuxia could not stand the low-level mistakes made by one of the old men. He went up and said, "How can you play this way? Your piece should be placed here." The old man was at a disadvantage. When he heard Wulingzi's words, he was unhappy. He stood up and said, "You're good. Come and play. When you watch, you think you're good. If it's really your turn, you'll be blind." "Fine, I'll play." Wulingzi went up and sat down. He took the old man's place and began to play. The result was, of course, Wulingzi's victory. After all, Go had not been promoted for long, and most people's Go skills were still relatively low. Although Wulingzi was also a stinky chess basket. But after playing with Duga Xiao, this kind of pinnacle expert for over a month, he also became awesome. Therefore, after one game, he defeated the opponent by a few pieces. After his great victory, all of the old men looked at him in a different light. They were full of unwillingness and admiration. "Again, I don't believe that I can't beat you." The old man was unwilling to accept the result. As a result, the two played another game, and Wulingzi won an even more brilliant victory. Next, the old men present were not convinced. Those who thought they were experts came forward to challenge Wulingzi. As a result, everyone was defeated. Wulingzi killed all the old men in all directions. He was so powerful that all the old men's faces turned ashen. Looking at everyone's eyes full of awe and admiration, Wulingzi felt really good, as if he had eaten an elixir. In fact, Wulingzi felt that this feeling was even better than getting a second-class evil spirit. Only after the sky had darkened did Wulingzi remember that he had come here to kill people. He had come here to handle matters. So he said goodbye in a hurry. However, this group of old men did not let him go. It was not easy to meet an invincible chess saint, so they must treat him to a meal. As a result, Wulingzi followed a group of old men to a restaurant for dinner. Many old men kept toasting him, because they worshipped him. Moreover, they were full of praise for his chess skills, almost flattering him to the heavens. Wulingzi was drunk, and put all the things in his mind aside. He drank and bragged with them. As a result, when he got up the next day, it was already noon. Moreover, he slept in the house of a stranger, who seemed to be the president of the Go Association in this town. The daughter of the president of the Go Association was promising. His son was an official outside, and his daughter was married to a middle-level officer in the Council of Light. Therefore, this old man was very prestigious in the local area. However, his children were outside, and he and his wife were at home. His wife had to take care of his grandson, so he was bored and took a liking to Go, and formed the Go Association. Wulingzi said goodbye to him, but the other party refused to let him go. He was so hospitable that Wulingzi could not refuse. If it was before, anyone who disobeyed Wulingzi would have been smashed to pieces with a slap. However, the old man admired him so much and was so hospitable. He was completely a confidant. How could Wulingzi do that? Therefore, Wulingzi was pulled to another town in a daze. He represented the Go Association and defeated the players of another town. Then at night, he invited them to dinner and drank. Then, the association discussed and let Wulingzi represent Lingmu town to participate in the Go competition in Namfeng County. The drunk Wulingzi was flattered by countless people. He suddenly became hot-headed and patted his chest to agree. Then, he was drunk again and fell asleep. When he woke up again, it was late in the morning. This was already the third day. The 3-day agreement with the Devil Queen was almost over. Therefore, Wulingzi had to say goodbye. Of course, the other party refused. In the end, Wulingzi said that he was going to do something. After he was done, he would represent Lingmu town to participate in the Go competition. Only then did the other party let him leave. Moreover, afraid that he did not know the way, he even sent his eldest grandson to take him to Holy Valley City and hired a large carriage for him. In fact, Wulingzi was prepared to fly over. In the end, in the face of the old man's enthusiasm and the strong-headed youth, Wulingzi could not refuse the other party's good intentions. He boarded the large carriage and headed to Holy Valley City 100 miles away. In the carriage, Wulingzi and the old man's eldest grandson stared at each other. This was an 11-year-old youth. He was very smart and delicate, but also more introverted and shy. At such a young age, that old man actually felt assured to let him go to the Holy Valley City alone, and even accompanied by Wulingzi. What kind of trust was this? After all, he was a great devil. Suddenly, Lingzi felt a tingling feeling in his heart. Grandpa Wu, what are you going to do in Holy Valley City? The youth could not help but ask. Lingzi was stunned and really did not know how to answer. I am going to see someone. Lingzi said. Oh, then I will help you ask the way later. Although the youth was shy, he was also very enthusiastic and willing to help. More than 2 hours later, they arrived at Holy Valley City. This was a gathering place of the half-human race, but most of the people coming and going were humans and barbarians. Grandpa Wu, who are you looking for? I will help you ask the way. The youth looked up and said eagerly. Looking at the pure eyes of the child, Lingzi knew that he should not say it, but he still could not help but say, I am looking for Madame Huang Yu. I know I have seen her before. I have also seen Princess Yang Wu. She is very cute. The youth said, I will take you there. A quarter of an hour later, the youth really brought Lingzi to a castle that had not yet been built. Then, he saw a beautiful little girl playing with a group of children on the road. She was the daughter of Yang Dingtian and Huang Yu, Yang Wu. She was also Lingzi's target this time. The eldest grandson of the Go Association president ran to her and said, Princess Wu, Grandpa Wu is looking for your mother. Then this beautiful and proud little girl, like a fairy from heaven, walked to Lingzi and said, Grandpa, why are you looking for my mother? Her eyes were as pure as jewels. Her voice was as tender and clear as a spring. Her little face seemed to be carved out of snow, exquisite beyond compare. Hearing this voice, looking at her delicate little face, looking at her curious and pure big eyes, Lingzi felt that his heart was about to melt. The Devil Queen's mission was for him to kill this little girl in exchange for breaking through to the saint level. However, to make a move on such a fairy-like little angel, before this thought came to his mind, Lingzi's whole body suddenly trembled, and he shook his head desperately. He even had a feeling of nausea and vomiting. He had not done it yet, but just the thought of it made him feel nauseous and vomit. Had his most precious daughter, spiritual Vulture, been so adorable when she was this old? It seemed that she was not so cute. He could not remember Vulture's appearance when she was young. He even seemed to have missed out on Vulture's childhood. It was only when he discovered Vulture's talent as a celestial spiritualist that he treasured this daughter of his. After these few days of experience, Lingzi discovered that it was as if there was another definition of happiness. His life seemed to be incomplete. Lingzi, you can't do it, right? Why don't I do it for you? Suddenly, Dongli's cold voice sounded in his ear. Then, a black shadow appeared in an instant. Chapter 1007. Dongli's movements were very fast and decisive. He charged over like a bolt of lightning, and then slammed his palm towards Yang Wu's head. Baby Yang Wu was just a little girl who was not even 5 years old. If she was hit, she would probably instantly. Dongli hated Yang Dingtian to the bone. But without the orders of the Demon King and the Devil Queen, he could not attack Yang Dingtian's family. At this moment, he had seized the opportunity. Of course, he had to kill Yang Dingtian's flesh and blood to vent his hatred. It was precisely because his movements were too fast that Lingzi had no time to think at all. He relied completely on instinct and slammed his palm down. In an instant, Dongli's body flew thousands of meters away. While flying in the air, he vomited blood, and his entire body was instantly smashed into pieces. Dongli was only an infinite great-grandmaster now. He could not block the palm of Lingzi, who was at the peak of the half-saint realm. His entire body was instantly smashed into pieces. However, after they were completely annihilated, new bones and flesh would grow out again. After completely landing, a naked and unharmed Dongli stood directly on the ground. Then, he looked coldly at Lingzi and said, You father and daughter really have bad intentions. Your heart is with Yang Dingtian. I finally got the evidence. At this moment, a few masters of the Council of Light rushed out of the crowd and directly carried Yang Wu and disappeared without a trace. They were all masters of the Council of Light who secretly protected Yang Wu. Everything just happened too fast, and Yang Dingtian's family had never had any accidents, so they could not react in time. They did not expect to experience such a shocking change. Dongli continued to look at Lingzi and said, Wuxia, you should know the consequences of betraying the Temple of Annihilation. You will be stripped of your evil spirit energy and torn to pieces. And your daughter's vulture will be humiliated to death. So if you want to redeem yourself, it's not too late to rush up and kill Yang Dingtian's daughter. Wuxia's mind was in a mess. After nearly 200 years of cowardice, his decisiveness in killing had long disappeared without a trace. Therefore, even though his cultivation was very strong, he had always been forced by others to take the next step. With his personality, it was difficult for him to make any decisions. It could even be said that he was indecisive. This time his target was Yang Wu, Huang Yu, or Xiang Xiang of the Foxman race. But when he really reached the southern barbarian continent, he might not necessarily kill. He wanted to make things difficult for the Queen Devil Queen. But he did not know how to make a decision. So he basically walked and watched. In his heart, if he really could not make a decision, he would directly capture Yang Dingtian's daughter and send her to the Empire of Darkness. Or he could capture Huang Yu and Princess Xiang Xiang and send them to the Empire of Darkness. As for how to make things difficult for the evil ways, he would have to find another opportunity. But now Dongli was forcing him. He could either kill Yang Dingtian's daughter, or he could directly betray the evil ways. At this moment, day by day Bella had rushed to the scene as fast as she could. He was completely terrified. Because of a special tacit understanding, Yang Dingtian's family had always been safe. So this time, after all the people of Cloud Sky City evacuated to the Sea of the Netherworld, Huang Yu and Xiang Xiang were worried about the construction of the southern barbarian continent. After the Doomsday War ended, Huang Yu brought her daughter back early. At this moment, Yan Yan and the other women were also bringing the children back to Cloud Sky City. But they did not expect that the evil ways would directly make a move on Yang Dingtian's wives and children. Therefore, almost immediately, dozens of demon vultures flew in different directions. One of the demon eagles carried Yang Wu and Xiang Xiang. Dongli looked at Wuxia and said, "My father-in-law, have you made your choice? Either you kill Yang Dingtian's daughter, or you will be stripped of your evil spirit and dismembered. Your own daughter will be humiliated by thousands of people." Even though Wuxia's cultivation was much higher than Dongli's, Dongli was not afraid of him at all. This cowardly old man had knelt in front of him countless times and sold himself to him. He even gave his own daughter to him. So cowardly and incompetent. No matter how strong his cultivation was, he was just a piece of trash. Dongli kept forcing him. All the humiliation from before could not help but surge in his heart. Actually, Dongli did not understand Wuxia. This 200-year-old man was indeed cowardly, and he was amenable to force but not persuasion. He had to be forced to make some decisions, but he had to be careful. When he was being forced, he had to give him a way out that he could accept. Otherwise, even a cornered dog would jump over a wall. When you wanted to do something that really hurt him, you could not say it clearly. Just do it directly. After you did it, he would slowly accept reality. But like now, it was impossible to force him into a dead end. Day by day Bella said from the side, "Senior Wuxia, I dare not advise you. I only have one thing to say. Sect Master Yang Dingtian can protect anyone. If you have anything to say, why don't you discuss it with him?" Ha ha ha. Dongli laughed loudly. "Old thief Wuxia, you were bullied by Yang Dingtian to this extent. Now you want to kneel and lick his boots? It's a great shame for you to live in this world." Ah! Before Dongli could finish, Wuxia rushed forward and gave him a crazy beating. Bang 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 bang. The old but powerful fists hammered Dongli's body crazily. In an instant, Dongli's body was smashed and torn apart. In a short moment, Dongli was beaten until he was no longer human. Blood spurted from all over his body, and he let out a shrill scream. The beating lasted for a full quarter of an hour. Dongli was beaten to death over and over again, and revived over and over again. The whole scene was too horrible to look at. Finally, Wuxia turned around and looked at day by day Bella, then grabbed Dongli's neck and disappeared without a trace. "Child, tell your grandfather that I can't represent Spiritwood Town to participate in the Go competition. Apologize to him for me." Wuxia's voice came from the air, and that youth was completely stunned by this scene. He just nodded blankly and said, "Oh, then I understand. Grandpa Wu, where are you going?" Wolingzi had no way to deal with Dongli. He couldn't even chain his Xian veins, nor could he knock him out, because the evil spirit energy could always be recovered in an instant. Just like that, he grabbed Dongli and flew around aimlessly. He didn't know where to go, and didn't know what to do next. In the beginning, Dongli kept mocking Wolingzi. Later, he didn't dare to do so, because Wu Lingzi would carry out incomparably cruel torture on him. He would pull out his teeth one by one, and turn his fingernails one by one. He would castrate him again and again and trample him again and again. Although Dongli, who had a first-class evil spirit, wouldn't die, this feeling of unbearable pain was still very clear and strong. It made him feel like he couldn't live and couldn't die. Moreover, even if he didn't mock or threaten Wolingzi, as long as he was angry in his heart, Wolingzi would still torture him crazily. Even later, as long as he was in a good mood, or in a bad mood, Wolingzi began to torture Dongli. In the beginning, it was only physical torture. Later on, it was personality and psychological torture. Therefore, during this period, it was the most painful time for Dongli. He even hated himself for taking the initiative to follow Wolingzi. Why did he feel that Wolingzi was easy to bully? Why did he want to use Wolingzi to send the Shura vulture to hell again? 3 days of time had passed long ago. Wolingzi was still wandering around, flying around aimlessly. He didn't know what decision to make. Should he go directly to Yang Dingtian? He was unwilling. After all, Yang Dingtian had once humiliated him greatly, and destroyed the entire vulture palace, leaving him with nothing. Return to the Empire of Darkness? That should be courting death. Therefore, he just flew around aimlessly, unable to make a decision. Day by day, Bella used her fastest speed to send Xiang and Yang Wu back to the Netherworld Sea. Immediately, she rode the Demon Eagle and flew to Cloud Sky City. She reported Wolingzi's situation, as well as the evil ways to attack Yang Dingtian's family. Yang Dingtian immediately abandoned all the matters in his hands, and rode the Demon Eagle King with Neru. They flew to the southern sea region of the southern barbarian continent, looking for Wolingzi everywhere. Finally, after 3 full days, Yang Dingtian finally saw Wolingzi and Dongli on a deserted island more than 20,000 miles away from the southern barbarian continent. When he landed on the island, he happened to hear Dongli's heart-wrenching scream, because Wolingzi was roasting a crocodile. Of course, while roasting the crocodile, he was also roasting Dongli. That's right, roasting Dongli. Putting him in the fire, roasting him. Because of the evil spirit, Dongli was restored to his original state again and again. And then he was roasted again and again. This kind of pain was more than just hellish. For 5 full days, Dongli was tortured by Wolingzi for 5 full days. In these 5 days, he really understood what it meant to cry for help but to no avail. He finally understood what it meant to beg for death, but to beg for life, but to beg for death. In these 5 days, he died more than 500 times. Sometimes, he even began to hate his evil spirit energy, because when he was in extreme pain, he really wanted to die. When Yang Dingtian appeared, Dongli even cried with joy, because, at least he could temporarily escape the tragic experience of being burned to death in the fire again and again. Seeing Yang Dingtian's arrival, Wolingzi often breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, he had been waiting for Yang Dingtian's arrival. In any case, he would never take the initiative to look for Yang Dingtian. He couldn't afford to lose face. In fact, he even had to run around for a few days before stopping on an island, so that Yang Dingtian could find him. Of course, Yang Dingtian knew Wolingzi's proud behavior like the back of his hand. "What are you doing here?" Wolingzi said coldly. Yang Dingtian stepped forward, knelt down and said, "Son-in-law Yang Dingtian greets father-in-law." Yang Dingtian's waist was sometimes incomparably hard, but at other times it was soft and tender. Although he came from the modern era of Earth, after coming to the chaotic world, he had not knelt to any enemy, but to the elders, whether it was his master, mother-in-law, or father-in-law. He had bowed to them many times. Seeing Yang Dingtian bow to him, Wolingzi was stunned. He didn't expect this at all. One had to know that Yang Dingtian was the ruler of the human countries, although the evil ways didn't want to admit it. But in many people's hearts, He was already someone on the same level as the Demon King Wentian. Such a big shot actually bowed to him. It must be said that although Wu Lingzi was the master of the Vulture Spirit Palace and had such a powerful cultivation, his thoughts of being a peasant had always occupied his consciousness. Therefore, when he became the ruler of the Vulture Palace, and the only half-saint expert other than Nihility Piaoling and Wu Yu, the Vulture Palace. The Vulture Palace's power completely surpassed the Yin-Yang School and the Black Heaven sect. But not only did he not expand, he still holed himself up in the southern barbarian continent and closed his doors to dominate. Zhu Qingzhu was only an infinite martial grandmaster, but he was already trying to rule the world. When such a big shot like Yang Dingtian wanted to bow to him, Wu Lingzi felt very happy. Suppressing the complicated emotions in his heart, Wu Lingzi turned his head and said coldly, "Sect leader Yang Dingtian, what can I do for you?" Then, he threw away the roasted crocodile meat in his hand. Chapter 1008. Yang Dingtian went forward and took out the fresh fruits and vegetables from the ice-cold jade box. There was also the marinated venison, as well as the first-rate wine. He poured a cup for Wu Lingzi, and then offered some fresh fruits. After that, he went to roast the venison. After roasting it, he handed it to Wu Lingzi and said, "Father-in-law, please enjoy." Wu Lingzi took it and chewed. He found that the roasted venison was indeed delicious. Then he ate the skewers and drank the wine. Yang Dingtian was grilling the skewers for him. While grilling the skewers, Yang Dingtian said, "Father-in-law, evil ways have a very fatal flaw, and that is that they have very few people. And I already have a lot of saint-level and half-saint-level experts. So, as long as evil ways take action, although I can't kill the evil spirit warriors, I can capture and imprison them. This way, there will be fewer and fewer people in evil ways. In the end, no one will even dare to leave the Empire of Darkness." Wu Lingzi was stunned. He didn't know why Yang Dingtian started the conversation with this. Yang Dingtian continued, "And I also have my weakness. Although I have a lot of officials and martial artists around me, the Council of Darkness is the light of light. However, my Radiant Council is in the light, while the evil Tao is in the dark. So if evil ways carry out the assassination plan, then I will be very passive. I can only watch as my confidants die one by one." Wu Lingzi nodded. "Yang Dingtian, not to mention my family. My wife's cultivation is not high. Moreover, most of the time, there are no powerful saint-level or half-saint-level experts to protect her. So my weakness is very weak." Wu Lingzi thought of the so-called assassination of Yang Dingtian's family. His daughter was actually casually playing with other friends on the road. The level of protection was indeed not high. Yang Dingtian, it is precisely because both sides have weaknesses that they have reached a balance and compromise. I will not touch the people of evil ways, and the evil ways will not touch my people. Let's fight in the open and fight head-on." At this moment, Wu Lingzi finally understood where this tacit understanding and balance came from. Yang Dingtian said, "However, evil ways have broken the balance this time. It can be seen that father-in-law is very important to them." Wu Lingzi vaguely knew something, but he wasn't very clear about it. Yang Dingtian said, "Father-in-law has betrayed the evil ways once before. This time, it will definitely be seen as a betrayal. So they probably can't tolerate you anymore. But don't worry, my strength is enough to protect you. So the key lies in Vulture. I don't need your protection." Wu Lingzi sneered. Yang Dingtian ignored his words and said, "Vulture is currently in the depths of the tiger and wolf's den. Although she is smart and cunning, because of father-in-law's change, it will bring great danger to her." Wu Lingzi suddenly couldn't eat the meat skewers, and fell into silence. Yang Dingtian said, "So my plan is like this. I will absolutely guarantee father-in-law's safety, and as long as you don't fall into the hands of evil ways, the evil energy in your body can't be taken away. And Vulture, I will use Dongli as an exchange." Wu Lingzi said, "You mean use Dongli to exchange for Vulture?" "Yes," Yang Dingtian said. "That's impossible," Wu Lingzi said. "Although Dongli has a first-class evil spirit, his use in evil ways is far less than Vulture. If a second war breaks out, billions of undead will enter the human countries. It doesn't matter if Dongli is missing, but Vulture, a celestial spirit master, will definitely be missing. Yang Dingtian said. Vulture's use in evil ways is unique, of course. So, she is almost a strategic weapon in evil ways. However, Dongli is also a strategic weapon. Wolingzi said. Dongli? What does he have? Yang Dingtian said. The void fire in his body can enter the dark world, pass through the border of the abyss, and go to other planes. In the future, if evil ways want to enter New Naga, they will definitely need the void fire. So Dongli is also unique. Wolingzi said. Evil ways will enter New Naga? Yang Dingtian said. New Naga will definitely be seen as the final journey of evil ways. It will become the last plane to rule the whole world. Wolingzi said. That's in the future. But for now, the first goal of evil ways is to launch a second war of destruction and lead billions of undead into the human countries. So the most important thing now is Vulture, not Dongli. Yang Dingtian admitted that Wolingzi had a point. Exchanging Dongli for Vulture was completely impossible at the moment. Yang Dingtian had analyzed that if evil ways wanted to lead countless undead into the human countries, they might have to start with Dishibian and Wolingzi. In fact, these two people were indispensable. Therefore, Yang Dingtian wanted to coax Wolingzi away to a place where evil ways could not reach. In this way, the possibility of billions of evil spirits entering the human countries was directly eliminated. As for where to put Wolingzi, he could first completely imprison Dongli, such as throwing him into his space ring, and then take him to Mount Buzhou to imprison him for life. Then he could take Wolingzi to the Dark Realm, and if necessary, take him directly to New Naga, where he could break through his new martial arts realm. In short, as long as Wolingzi disappeared completely, then perhaps Evil Way's plan for a second war of destruction would be completely ruined. Yang Dingtian said. Although the plan of exchanging Dongli for Vulture may not succeed at the moment, but at least it can guarantee the safety of Vulture. Now the one in the most danger is you, father-in-law. Me? Wolingzi said. Yes, it's you. Yang Dingtian said. Of course, you are also important to Evil Ways at this time. They may not want your life. But once you fall into their hands, they will definitely use the most terrible way to completely control you. Wolingzi's breathing suddenly became rapid. Yang Dingtian said. Of course, I can absolutely guarantee your safety. Next, there are two places you can choose to go. Wolingzi said. Go ahead. Yang Dingtian said. The first place is Little Western Paradise's Mount Buzhou. Wolingzi said. Impossible. Little Western Paradise is the plane of evil ways. If you didn't guard the gate to the human countries, the powerhouses of Little Western Paradise would have poured into the human countries. Yang Dingtian said. Mount Buzhou is Mount Buzhou, Little Western Paradise is Little Western Paradise. Little Western Paradise can't control Mount Buzhou, and Mount Buzhou is even more powerful than Little Western Paradise. Wolingzi said. I know Mount Buzhou is the High Priest Association, but if you want to go to Mount Buzhou, you have to go through Little Western Paradise. Evil Ways have already set up an inescapable trap in Little Western Paradise. If we go through Little Western Paradise, we can only walk into the trap. Yang Dingtian said. I don't need to go through Little Western Paradise to go to Mount Buzhou. Wolingzi said in shock. How is that possible? Yang Dingtian said. I use spatial techniques to go there. Wolingzi was stunned, and then fell silent. Yang Dingtian said. The second place is the Dark Realm. Wolingzi said. No, Evil Ways can also go to the Dark Realm. Yang Dingtian said. No, because Dongli is in our hands. Evil Ways can never go to the Dark Realm. So in the Dark Realm, you are absolutely safe, but you will be lonely. Wolingzi fell silent. Yang Dingtian said. Which place do you prefer to go? Wolingzi thought for a while and said. In that case, the Dark Realm is not bad, but it is indeed too lonely. Yang Dingtian said. In the first Dark Realm, I can build a beautiful castle for you there. Then, I will provide you with a lot of wine and food, and many maids and servants, an astronomical number of pills, and that place will become your absolute independent kingdom. Then do I have to live there forever? Wolingzi said. Yang Dingtian said. Of course not. As long as the battle between me and evil ways is over, I will bring you back and share the joy of family with Vulture. Of course, this is based on the foundation that I win. Then can you win? Wolingzi asked. Yang Dingtian said, Of course I can win. You didn't see it, but I have already mastered the sword spirit of the Naga royalty. And soon, I will combine with Nagaduga Shuang, and I will directly share the demigod talent with her. Evil Ways and the Demon King Wentian are just making their final struggle. Okay, Wolingzi suddenly sighed, and then he said with concern, Then where will you put Dongli? It must be a place where no one can find him. Yang Dingtian directly put Dongli on the fire. When he was completely burned and began to resurrect, that would be when Dongli was at his weakest. Then, he directly stuffed Dongli into his space ring. Wolingzi was shocked. This place was indeed the safest place. This time, Wolingzi finally relaxed a little. Suddenly he said, Prepare all the games of Go, Chinese chess, mahjong and poker for me. Also prepare enough experts for me. Yang Dingtian said, You don't have to say that. Also in the first dark realm, you are not completely free. We have some things that we need your help with. Wolingzi said, Go ahead. Yang Dingtian said, In addition to your servants and maids, we will also send a group of martial venerables and grandmasters to the first dark realm to cultivate. Over there, you are their supreme teacher. You'd better supervise their cultivation. Wolingzi said, That depends on whether I am interested or not. Yang Dingtian said, I believe you will be interested. Half an hour later, Yang Dingtian took Wolingzi directly to the north. Worried that a long delay might lead to trouble, Yang Dingtian would first take Wolingzi into the first dark realm. Then, he would send servants, maids, and elite warriors to continuously enter the first dark realm to cultivate. Yang Dingtian's plan was very good, and it had almost succeeded. But in the world of ice and snow, Yang Dingtian encountered people blocking his way. Di Shibian, the Devil Queen, the dead concubine, and Crown Prince Li Ming. Prince Li Ming directly placed a sharp blade on Shira Vulture's body. Yang Dingtian immediately closed his eyes. Queen Devil Queen looked at Wolingzi and said, Wolingzi, return to our side immediately, and then everything that happened before will be treated as if nothing happened. You can still advance to Martial Saint. Otherwise, your biological daughter Vulture will die in front of you. Wolingzi's expression changed dramatically, and then he sneered. I don't believe two things. First, I don't believe that you will let me go. Second, I don't believe that you will be willing to kill Vulture. She is your celestial spirit master, and has an irreplaceable role. At this moment, Queen Mermaid Violets, who had been hiding in the dark, slowly appeared. The strength of the two sides began to converge. 2 martial saints and 1 half martial saint. Of course, Yang Dingtian's side was stronger, because he had the Naga royalty sword soul. Prince Li Ming did not say anything, directly pulled off his pants, and then sneered. Although I am very infatuated with Princess Mudan, I am still willing to sleep with a great beauty. Yes, we can't kill Vulture, but we can humiliate her. Then, Prince Li Ming looked at Yang Dingtian. Your Excellency Yang Dingtian, if you don't care about being cuckolded, then my threat is useless. So, you decide what to do. No. Shira Vulture shouted loudly. Yang Dingtian, save me, don't let him defile me. Chapter 1009. Yang Dingtian calmed himself down as quickly as possible. Then he said to the Queen Devil Queen, How about we make a deal? I'll give you Dongli, and you give me Vulture. The Queen Devil Queen laughed and said, Yang Dingtian, are you kidding? Dongli may be the adopted son of the Demon King, and he has a first-class evil spirit. But can his current value be compared to Vulture? And to be honest, ever since we recovered his will, the distortion in his heart has begun to affect our actions. So, you know what I mean. Yang Dingtian said. But he has the Void Fire, which can help you cross the abyss border to the Umbral Realm, and even go to New Naga, isn't it? Do you need me to tell you the specific coordinates of New Naga? Oh, without the Void Fire, you can't reach the depths of the third Umbral Realm. But I also have a way to let you enter New Naga. The Queen Devil Queen said. And then, you'll be completely trapped inside and never be able to get out, right? Or, when you're strong enough, you can easily enter New Naga and wipe us out, right? Then the Devil Queen said, Yang Dingtian, I'm not a very long-term person. So in the future, Dongli may be very useful, but now, at least for now, he's useless. Suddenly Yang Dingtian was speechless. The Devil Queen's straightforwardness made Yang Dingtian feel like a stepmother. Dongli was the adopted son of the Demon King Wentian, but not the adopted son of the Devil Queen. Prince Li Ming said, Yang Dingtian, Wolingzi now has two choices. Otherwise, Wolingzi would return to our side and nothing would change. Otherwise, Wolingzi would be by your side, and Vulture would be ridden by thousands of evil spirit warriors. There is no third option. Yang Dingtian's heart skipped a beat. Immediately, his emperor-grade soul sword began to tremble. Not to mention Prince Li Ming, even the Devil Queen would not be able to withstand his near-emperor-grade soul sword. Prince Li Ming did not dare to kill Vulture, and even if he wanted to humiliate him, he would not be able to do so in a short period of time. Therefore, whoosh 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 whoosh. Yang Dingtian didn't say a word, and the entire Naga myriad tribe's sword soul shot out. In an instant, tens of thousands of giant swords turned into incomparably bright rays of light, and shot towards Prince Li Ming. At the same time, Neru and the Mermaid Queen Violets instantly attacked the Devil Queen and Dishi Bien. There was no other purpose. They just wanted to entangle the two of them and prevent the two saint-level experts from rescuing Prince Li Ming. Prince Li Ming looked at Yang Dingtian's sword soul and only laughed, not moving at all. Whoosh! An incomparably powerful sword soul shot past. Not only did it directly pass through Prince Li Ming, but it also passed through the Shura Vulture. However, nothing happened, because this was just an illusory shadow. Prince Li Ming said, Yang Dingtian, at this moment, you have the Naga royalty sword soul, which is already extraordinary. I'm just a mere half-saint. How could I dare to appear in front of you with the vulture? What if you snatch it away? I'm just an illusion. I'm thousands of miles away. Of course, you can see what I'm doing, and I'm really doing it. After saying that, the restrained vulture was pressed down by the neck and forced to pout in a very seductive posture. I said, although I'm infatuated with Mudan, such a beauty, especially your woman, is still very attractive to me. Prince Li Ming said slowly, then reached out and grabbed Vulture's skirt, saying, As long as I tear off this skirt, this beautiful woman will be mine. Ha! Vulture screamed in disgust as if it had been bitten by a poisonous snake, and said sternly, Bitch Li Ming, don't touch me. One day, I'll cut you into pieces. At this time, Devil Queen held her magic wand and made a divine oath of annihilation. She said word by word, After Wolingzi returns to the Empire of Darkness, I promise to let bygones be bygones. I won't take any revenge on Wolingzi and Vulture. If I violate this oath, I'll let His Majesty the Demon King turn into ashes and never be reincarnated. I'll let my Demon King's concubine perish, and Nihility Piaoling sink into hell forever. I'll let her be a slave or a prostitute for generations to come, never to rise again. This oath could be said to be extremely fierce. Evil ways were cruel and evil, but they were still incomparably adhering to these oaths. Once an oath was made, it would definitely be fulfilled. Prince Li Ming's illusion looked at Wolingzi and said, Wolingzi, you've sold your daughter at least 3 times. The first time, you sold her to Wu Yuming. The second time, you sold her to that pervert Dongli. The third time, you sold your daughter to Yang Dingtian, causing her to be imprisoned for life. Now, are you going to betray your own daughter for the 4th time? Are you going to watch as she is humiliated by me, and then by countless evil martial artists? There are many people who hate Yang Dingtian, Shimanju Yang Zheng, Guda Wuhuan, Zhu Hongyu and so on. I believe they can't wait to line up and make Yang Dingtian a cuckold. Prince Li Ming said until here and looked at Yang Dingtian. Then he looked back at Wolingzi and said, Wolingzi, don't you hate Yang Dingtian a lot? This way, you can take revenge in another way. You can watch Yang Dingtian be made a cuckold countless times. But it's a pity that the tool for revenge is your own daughter. At this moment, Wolingzi's entire body was trembling. His entire soul, his entire rotten heart was trembling. It was like a bomb that was about to explode. He had always been the ugliest clown in the world. He was no longer evil but disgusting. An old beast who messed around with his own granddaughter-in-law. A good-for-nothing who sold his daughter for glory. A trash who was bullied and trampled on time and time again. It was not that he had never sold his daughter, so it should not be a big deal. But for some reason, he felt like he was about to explode. All along he had been afraid of death. But now if death could solve the problem, he might choose to die. But, even if he wanted to die now, he could not die. Even if he exploded his sea of energy, he would not die. The evil spirit energy would restore everything to normal. He panted heavily and turned around to look at Yang Dingtian. Yang Dingtian, I have disappointed you. Wuxia said word by word with his back facing the Queen Devil Queen. But his voice was coming from his abdomen, and he mouthed word by word. Yang Dingtian, I am a disgusting and rotten old thief, but this time, I will not disappoint you. Then, he slowly walked toward the Queen Devil Queen. Prince Li Ming laughed. Yang Dingtian, if you don't care about being cuckolded, it is still not too late to stop Wuxia. You must know, he is the key to us launching the second battle of destruction. Yang Dingtian was silent. Prince Li Ming said, Yang Dingtian, you are still so stupid and hypocritical, righteous and kind. This is not good. A cheap woman has you in her grasp. I really don't know whether to laugh or cry. Yang Dingtian spread his hands. The second battle of destruction is the so-called invasion of the undead army, right? If you treat this as a life-saving straw, then come. If I can win the first time, I can also win the second time. Queen Devil Queen sneered. Is that so? If we had not been careless in the first battle of destruction, playing games with you day after day, I am afraid that the human countries would have been destroyed on the first day. If I had let the Legion of Doom invade all the cities of the human countries from the beginning, then the entire human countries would have been wiped out. Well said but meaningless, Yang Dingtian said. Because the stupidity of committing is always irreversible. Just like the stupidity of your soft-hearted male chauvinism? Queen Devil Queen sneered, then took Wuxia and instantly fled far away. Dishi Bian still had his trademark sneer on the corner of his mouth, and followed into the distance. Then Prince Li Ming and Vulture's phantoms also disappeared without a trace. Only Neru, Violets and Yang Dingtian were left on the scene. Violets glanced at Yang Dingtian, and opened her mouth as if she wanted to scold him. But in the end, she did not say anything. She could not say that Yang Dingtian did not care about Vulture's life and death, and directly detained Wuxia. Moreover, this incident might be a real transformation for Wuxia. Evil ways regained Wuxia, but only God knew what the consequences would be. After returning to the Empire of Darkness. For the first time, Vulture threw herself into Wuxia's arms and cried loudly. This was the first time that Wuxia had used his identity as her father to protect her. Wuxia's heart trembled again, and his rotten heart seemed to feel numb again. Was this the pride of being a father? Was this the sense of honor that came from being a father and protecting his daughter? If so, this feeling was really good. Also, when he was worshipped by many ordinary old men in Spiritwood Town, that feeling was also very good. Perhaps he should not have become a big shot. It was a mistake for him to get the so-called Netherworld Ghost Fire. He was an ordinary person who had always been sheltered under the light of his elder brother. If he did not get all the Netherworld Ghost Fire, he would be an ordinary elder in Vulture Palace. Perhaps that would be even more happy. I am just an ordinary person. The so-called Netherworld Ghost Fire is just a mistake. At this moment, Wuxia finally had a deep understanding. He was an ordinary person, not a just and selfless leader like Yang Dingtian. He was also not a ruthless and scheming evil overlord like the Demon King Wentian. The Netherworld Ghost Fire had spoiled him, an ordinary person, so he became the biggest clown in history. Wuxia once again arrived in front of the Queen Devil Queen, Prince Li Ming, and Princess Mudan. The Devil Queen said, "Don't worry. I said that I will not take revenge, so I will definitely not take revenge. Dongli only has himself to blame for ending up like this." Then, the Queen Devil Queen looked at Prince Li Ming and said, Even letting Wulingzi kill Yang Dingtian's daughter was unnecessary. If it was not for this rotten idea, he would not have ended up in this embarrassing situation. Prince Li Ming's eyelids twitched slightly, and then he bowed and said, "It is my fault, please forgive me, Devil Queen." The Devil Queen said, "Wulingzi, although you did not kill Yang Dingtian's daughter this time, however, you did not betray us. Because you chose to escape to the Dark Realm instead of standing by Yang Dingtian's side and becoming enemies with the Temple of Annihilation. You let us see the true position in your heart. This is also a blessing in disguise." "Yes, Your Majesty, Devil Queen," Wulingzi bowed and said. Prince Li Ming said, "Through this, we have also understood that although Wulingzi is very powerful, you only have the soul of an ordinary person hidden in your heart. So after this matter, if you want to be an ordinary person, we will help you. After this matter is over, you can play chess with Dugu Xiao every day in the Skirich imperial capital. However, the difference is that your status in the Empire of Darkness will be very high, and no one will dare to look down on you anymore." "Many thanks, Your Highness," Wulingzi said. The Devil Queen said, "All right, we will now fulfill our promise and take you to break through to the saint level." Then, the Devil Queen and Dishi Bian took Wulingzi and left the Empire of Darkness. As for the Throne of Darkness, the enormous power and authority in the Skirich imperial capital, it was temporarily handed over to Prince Li Ming. I really hope that Yang Dingtian will lose his mind and rush into the Empire of Darkness's Skirich imperial capital to save Vulture. That would be perfect. The Devil Queen sighed. Prince Li Ming did not say anything, but he snorted in his heart. Yang Dingtian was very clear about the terrifying power of the Skirich imperial capital. Even the Nagaduga Shuang was almost trapped inside. If Yang Dingtian rushed over, not to mention 2 or 3 saint-level experts, even 100 saint-level experts would not be able to return alive. The Skirich imperial capital's energy prison could easily imprison all saint-level experts. After all, back then, this energy prison had almost imprisoned Nagaduga Shuang. One day later, the Devil Queen, Dishi Bian, and Wulingzi once again landed in the Ghost Hell region, which was tens of thousands of miles away. Wulingzi had not been to this place in a long time. The reason why he was so powerful was that a large part of his power came from the undead of the Ghost Hell region. However, ever since he had been chased by the 2 undead lords, he had not dared to come to the Ghost Hell region again. Almost all of Wulingzi's power came from here. His twisted and ugly life also came from here. Now, he had come here once again to break through to the saint level. Before, he had dreamed of breaking through to the saint level. Oh no, he had not even dared to dream of breaking through to the saint level. At this moment, this huge meat pie was about to fall directly on his head. This kind of reaping without sowing was what he liked the most. However, at this moment, there was no joy in his heart, only endless mockery. They arrived at the Ghost Hell region's sky-split tower. Huge flames once again condensed into Wentian Ghost Emperor's face. "Piao Ling, are you sure you want this traitor in front of you to become an undying saint-level expert?" Wentian Ghost Emperor asked. "Yes, Your Majesty the Demon King," the Devil Queen said slowly and firmly. "The second great war of destruction must erupt. I must destroy the human countries by my hand." Chapter 10:10. Ghost Emperor Wentian said, "Your stubbornness really makes it hard for others to follow." Just from this sentence alone, one could hear the helplessness and deep affection. The Demon King Wentian, who was on the throne of darkness, could no longer hear it. Because after 200 years on the throne of darkness, almost all of his sensitive emotions had been exhausted. Right now he was more like a machine. Ghost Emperor Wentian sighed. Fortunately, Wulingzi also has the netherworld ghost flame, so when he devours the undead crystals, there won't be any loss. Otherwise my heart would probably twitch in pain. Then Ghost Emperor Wentian didn't look at Wulingzi. He directly summoned countless undead again. Suddenly, the spectacle from before appeared again. From the Ghost Hell region, which spanned nearly 20,000 miles, countless undead suddenly turned into a stream of energy essence and gathered above the heaven-reaching tower like a meteor. Countless stars gathered, and turned into a pillar of incomparably bright light. Swish! Then this incomparably powerful light fiercely drilled into Wulingsie's head. Suddenly he let out a loud roar. His entire body was almost completely transparent. Countless amounts of energy crazily rushed in. This energy was unimaginably huge, and was completely destructive to the profound veins. Fortunately, there was a second great evil spirit, otherwise he would have turned into ashes in an instant. Of course, even so, Wulingzi didn't feel too good, because he was different from Dishibian. His profound veins were only at the 8th grade, not even at the 9th grade. With 8th grade profound veins, the cultivation of a great grandmaster was already the limit. Wulingzi forcefully devoured the energy, causing his cultivation to reach the half-step sage level. But this was already the limit of the limit. To reach the saint level, one needed at least the 9th grade profound veins. And Dishibian had the 9th profound veins. So when he broke through to the saint level, he didn't feel much pain. And the pain Wulingzi felt when he broke through to the saint level was completely indescribable. Countless amounts of energy poured into his energy sea from his profound veins, and then directly exploded his entire energy sea, turning it into ashes in an instant. It was the evil spirit energy. In an instant, it condensed again and recovered to its original state. Just like that, Wulingzi's body was smashed into pieces and turned into ashes again and again, only to be reborn again and again. This hellish torture and pain came one round after another. At the same time, the entire Netherworld Ghost Emperor collapsed once again. A blood-red rift was torn open in the sky once again. Once again, the earth was torn apart, creating a huge abyss. However, it didn't matter. The Ghost Hell region didn't need anything to live in. There were only undead, so it didn't matter how much it was destroyed. Finally, thus the torment of hell was over. Everything returned to silence. Wulingzi's body condensed for the last time. Then he finally became a saint-level expert. Furthermore, he was a powerful saint-level fighter. Before this, he had never even dreamed that he would break through to the saint level. After all, there hadn't been a saint-level fighter in the human countries for hundreds of years. This was because the energy density in the human countries was so thin that it was out of balance. It was no longer possible for humans to break through to the saint level. Now he had actually become a saint-level fighter. Just like how he had easily broken through to the martial grandmaster level, and then a few decades later, he had easily broken through to the half-saint level. Now he had once again broken through to the saint level effortlessly. In terms of cultivation and martial arts luck, there shouldn't be anyone who could surpass him. Although Yang Dingtian's cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, and in less than 10 years, he had gone from an enlightener to a half-saint. However, his breakthrough journey had been full of hardships and dangers, and he had been surrounded by danger countless times. After breaking through to the saint level, Wulingzi suddenly felt that his heart had become even more empty. If it wasn't the result of his own hard work, it was really hard to be satisfied with happiness. There was only more intense unease. Wulingzi, from today onwards, you are also my emissary. Ghost Emperor Wentian said. Dishibian, take him around, and have a look at our undead empire. From today onwards, the two of you will be second only to one person in the undead empire, and above hundreds of millions. Yes, Dishibian said, and then without saying another word, he directly left the Tower of Babel. Wulingzi followed him out. From now on, Wulingzi is immortal and indestructible. His cultivation is almost no less than yours, and you can no longer control him. Ghost Emperor Wentian said. If he betrays you again, do you have a way? Queen Devil Queen said. His daughter Vulture is in our hands. Ghost Emperor Wentian said. This person is extremely greedy and selfish. He won't care about his daughter's life or death. No, he is no longer the same. Queen Devil Queen said. Not long ago, he had just escaped from our control, but in order to protect his daughter's chastity, he risked the danger of being punished, and once again entered our clutches. Oh, is that so? Ghost Emperor Wentian said with a smile. But it's not enough to rely on just this. It's best if you can directly use a first-class evil spirit to suppress his will, so that he will never rebel. I remember, Dongli's first-class evil spirit just happens to grow on your half of the evil spirit tree. At present, except for the void-splitting fire, Dongli has already lost its usefulness. It's better to put his first-class evil spirit on Wolingzi. Infernal Queen Wentian said, I do wish to do so, but unfortunately I can't. Dongli has already fallen into Yang Dingtian's hands, and at present, it's impossible to take him back. Unless we catch Yang Dingtian's relatives and carry out a hostage exchange. But now we can't catch his children and relatives. And if we touch his trusted subordinates, then the balance will be broken. As long as the evil spirit warriors under my command appear, they will be captured by him and locked up forever. They might even be locked up in the dark matter and perish together. Ghost Emperor Wentian said, The Legion of Doom is useless, and your evil spirit warriors are also useless. It doesn't matter if they are destroyed. Queen Devil Queen said, If there are no living people below, then even if you become the ruler of the world, what's the point of it? For example, although you are the supreme ruler of the underworld empire, you probably don't have any sense of power. You also want to return to the human body as soon as possible and enslave real intelligent life. Suddenly, Ghost Emperor Wentian sighed and said, Yes, commanding billions of undead is really meaningless. Unfortunately, I still have to wait for a full 200 years before I can become a living person again. Then, Ghost Emperor Wentian said, If there comes a day when Wolingzi really betrays us again, then Wentian will deal with him. Then Di Shibian will deal with him. After all, these two saint-level powerful beings were created by me. When the time comes, Di Shibian can destroy him. Queen Devil Queen said, Wolingzi has a second-grade evil spirit in his body. He will never die. Ghost Emperor Wentian said, Oh, Di Shibian might not kill him, but completely devour him. Devour such a disgusting old fart? Queen Devil Queen shook her head in disgust. At this time, Di Shibian and Wolingzi were standing in the square of the Netherworld Ghost City. I'll tell you, Di Shibian said, The Ghost Emperor left a fatal mark on your body. If you betray me, I can directly devour you. All your energy, second-grade evil spirit, and so on will all belong to me. However, I feel that it's very disgusting, so you better not betray me, lest I have nightmares. Don't worry, I definitely won't let you have nightmares. Wolingzi said. At this time, Queen Poisa was still aimlessly looking for the Naga Duga Shuang. Once Duga Shuang completed her transformation, she would have nothing to do with her. Therefore, Queen Poisa had no energy connection with her. The only thing she relied on was a kind of feeling. More accurately, it was a kind of immersion and instinct. For example, when a snake was at its weakest after shedding, it would definitely find the safest place for itself to pass through the entire transformation period. Naga Duga Shuang was a Naga descendant of the sea serpents. Therefore, after her transformation, although she was incomparably powerful, she was still full of insecurity, so she instinctively wanted to find her own nest. And where was the nest of the sea serpents? Of course, it was at the bottom of the sea. To be more precise, it was at the Naga Empire. However, the Naga Empire had been completely destroyed, so the next best thing was Naga Duga Shuang. They would go to the nearest similar Naga Empire, such as the Sea Serpent Empire. Queen Poisa knew that under the Devil's Sea, there was a city of the Sea Serpent Empire buried under the sea, Underwater Maze City. Yang Dingtian had been to this place before. However, it had been completely buried by the dark matter. Of course, Queen Poisa had just thought of this not long ago. She had been looking for Naga Shuang for nearly 2 months. At first, she was completely aimlessly searching. Later, she gradually put herself in the shoes of a newly transformed sea serpent, and then followed her instinct to find a place to hide. Therefore, Queen Poisa gave up searching on land and gave up flying. She turned herself into a sea serpent again, and drilled into the bottom of the sea. While searching, she completely put herself in the shoes of an injured and transformed sea serpent, looking for a place where she felt safe. Then unknowingly, she swam nearly 100,000 miles. She came to the Devil's Sea. No ship, no sea beast, no flying mount could pass through the Devil's Sea. Because there were huge whirlpools hundreds of miles, or even thousands of miles. There were shocking waves tens of thousands of meters high. There were also shocking giant beasts like the ancient Xiao Xiao. To put it bluntly, even if Queen Poisa was already a middle or high-level half-saint, she could not navigate the Devil's Sea with ease, because it was full of fatal dangers. Queen Poisa had a deep understanding of this, because she had come here many times to adventure. Not only her, but Hai Xian had also come here many times to adventure. Therefore, she was completely prepared for danger. However, the Devil's Sea was very safe, without any danger. For a few days, she did not encounter a single terrifying sea beast. There were only countless skeletons. Then Poisa understood. An incomparably powerful underwater creature had come here. That might be Nagaduga Shuang, that's right. Chapter 10-11. Queen Poisa continued to move forward, following the sea beasts' corpses. The deeper she went, the denser the sea beasts' corpses became. There were tens of thousands of them. The venomous Sand Queen had discovered a second ancient giant beast. This ancient giant beast was even bigger and more powerful than Xiao Xiao. However, his corpse was still lying under the sea like a huge mountain, at the bottom of the sea. She continued to search and search. Queen Poisa did not know how long she had swam, nor how far she had swam. Suddenly, the countless corpses disappeared. In front of her was endless dark matter. The entire seabed was filled with it. It was completely boundless. Above the dark matter, there was a layer of absolute void. Above the void there was seawater. Queen Poisa continued to think about the southeast. She swam above the dark matter. It was impossible to enter the dark matter. Even Naga could not do anything to the dark matter. This had been proven in the Empire of Darkness. Queen Poisa continued to swim. She did not know how long she had swam, nor how far she had swam. Perhaps another half a month had passed. Perhaps another few tens of thousands of miles had passed. At this time, she was more than 200,000 miles away from the eastern cloud state. This place was already a place that the human countries had never been to before. It was also a place that the Sea Serpent clan had never been to before. Moreover, the next scene was exactly the same. The blue seawater was almost still. There were no ripples. Below there was endless dark matter. If it were Yang Dingtian, he would definitely suspect that this was already an overlapping space. Even if it was 1,000,000 miles away, it would still be the same. Queen Poisa knew about overlapping space. However, she was a stubborn person, so she kept swimming just like that. In the end, she could not even feel that she was moving at all, because everything around her was exactly the same. Until one day, there was a moment. Suddenly, an incomparably huge door appeared on the dark matter at the bottom of the sea. It was a real door, not a hole or a hollow. It was a huge door made of an unknown material that was directly embedded in the dark matter at the bottom of the sea. This giant door was about a few thousand meters tall like a mountain. The two doors were not completely shut. Instead, there was a small gap between them. Although the gap was very small, it was enough for dozens of people to enter. Without any hesitation, the venomous queen entered the door. When he entered the gate, he saw two words written on the top of the gate. Mo Capital. This was the capital of the Sea Serpent Empire. Or rather, this door was the entrance to the capital of the Sea Serpent Empire. The capital of the Mermaid Empire was called Shajing, while the capital of the Sea Serpent Empire was called Mojing. This empire was Queen Poisa's former kingdom. After passing through the gate, it was as if he had arrived at the complete devil capital. However, it was a distorted and crooked devil capital. The entire fiend capital was completely enveloped by dark matter. However, the interior of the city ruins was not completely engulfed by the dark matter. Despite the passage of countless years, the originally magnificent city had now been completely reduced to ruins. However, one could vaguely see the prosperity and magnificence of the devil capital from more than 10,000 years ago. Then Queen Poisa saw countless corpses. Or rather, they were not corpses, but petrified sea serpents. They were densely packed and innumerable. Countless sea serpents on the roads, in the houses, and so on had all been turned into stone. Of course, the devil capital had also been completely massacred by the Naga Empire. Medusa had turned all the creatures in the Sea Serpent Empire into stone, and the Devil Capital was no exception. Queen Poisa immediately began to wonder if the Nagaduga Shuang was here. Would he find a place to hide in the Devil Capital? After all, this place was far enough from the human countries, and this used to be the capital of the Sea Serpent clan. However, Queen Poisa soon gave up on this idea. This was because when she swam in this dead city, Queen Poisa was filled with uneasiness and discomfort. Although these countless sea serpents had been turned into stone, she still felt that there were countless pairs of eyes watching her. Thus, Queen Poisa continued to move forward. She passed through the civilian area of the Devil Capital, then passed through the middle production area, and passed through the noble area. When she arrived at the noble area, the buildings here were already incomparably gorgeous. It was not something that the Mermaid Empire, after the Great Nirvana, could compare to. Although they had all been reduced to ruins, these houses still left behind a gorgeous aftertaste. Here, there were still sea serpents who had been turned into stone everywhere. Finally, Queen Poisa entered the most gorgeous and huge building. This was the Sea Serpent clan's palace. Although 10,000 years had passed, the entire palace was still as good as new. This was because most of the materials of the palace were jade and crystals that could withstand the baptism of time. The magnificence of the entire palace was not something that the Zhongjing Main Hall or the Little Western Paradise Silver Palace could compare to. It was not even comparable to the Palace of New Naga. The entire palace covered an area of more than 100 miles. Each door was a few hundred meters tall. Each wall was nearly 1,000 meters tall. Each pillar was several tens of meters thick. Each wall and pillar was engraved with the patterns of the Sea Serpent clan and Naga. Although more than 10,000 years had passed, they were still vivid and lifelike. The entire palace was so magnificent that it was like a picture in a dream. Any creature would feel incomparably small in front of this palace. Within the palace, countless beautiful sea serpent maids and countless guards and warriors had all turned into stone. Finally, in the core hall of the palace, Queen Poisa met the Empress of the Sea Serpent Empire. She was also a beautiful sea serpent queen. Her beauty even surpassed that of Violets and Poisa. Even though she had turned into stone, she still looked completely alive. Her eyes were still a deep blue, and her skin was still snow white. However, her lower body was still a snake. She, who was sitting cross-legged on the throne, was 100 meters tall. She was a giant, a stunning beauty who was 100 meters tall. In the entire Sea Serpent Empire, it was as if she was the only one who was 100 meters tall. The rest of the Sea Serpent clan, even with their tails, were not more than 10 meters tall. It turned out that the entire palace was built for the Sea Serpent Empress alone. This Sea Serpent Empress must have been incomparably powerful when she was alive. She should have been second only to Naga. Unfortunately, she still turned into stone. The venomous queen flew up to her high throne. Then she found that she seemed to be holding something in her hand. It was a huge crystal ball that was flickering with a blurry light. At that time, Medusa had turned all the sea serpents into stone, but there was no change to non-living matter. Therefore, even though more than 10,000 years had passed, this crystal ball was still intact, and it still contained a powerful force. Queen Poisa flew onto the Sea Serpent Empress's palm. At this moment, she finally saw the Sea Serpent Empress's face clearly. She felt that it was very strange, and actually looked familiar. Soon, she knew why she felt that it looked familiar. It was because this Sea Serpent Empress looked very much like her. But at the same time, she also looked very much like Hai Xian. No, to be precise, it was a part of her that looked very much like the Sea Serpent Empress in front of her. And a part of Hai Xian was also like the Sea Serpent Empress in front of her. Queen Poisa's heart trembled. What did this mean? She knew very well. First of all, this meant that she and Hai Xian were real sisters, sisters of the same blood. Although Hai Xian had always called her sister, the two of them always felt that they were not related by blood. It was because Queen Poisa had raised Hai Xian, so she had always been called sister. She did not expect that the two of them were real sisters. Moreover, the Empress of the Sea Serpent Empire in front of her was her, and Hai Xian's mother. However, perhaps this was normal. Hai Xian and Poisa were both the next generation of sea serpents who were preparing to give birth to Naga. And as the vulture of the serpent clan, the last survivor, it was most reasonable for them to be the descendants of the Empress of the Sea Serpent Empire. After a short period of shock, Queen Poisa realized that the Empress of the Sea Serpent Empire in front of her seemed to be ready to smash the crystal ball. However, before she could smash it, Medusa had turned her into a stone. Then why did she smash the crystal ball? Could it be that by smashing the crystal ball, she could stop Naga Medusa and save the Sea Serpent Empire? Then, what exactly was this crystal ball? Suddenly, Queen Poisa had an impulse to touch the crystal ball, and even try to inject energy. Of course, there might be terrible consequences if she did so. However, Queen Poisa did not care. She had always done what she wanted to do. Thus, Queen Poisa gently placed her jade-like hand on the crystal ball. The crystal ball in the hands of the Empress of the Sea Serpent Empire, of course, did not seem big. However, in front of Poisa, it was even taller than her. Inside the crystal ball, there seemed to be another world, another universe. It was incomparably vast and mysterious. As soon as her hand touched the crystal ball, she immediately felt a very intimate and powerful energy. This crystal ball did not reject her at all. Instead, it had an intimate communication with her. It was even calling out to her and injecting her consciousness and energy. The venomous queen was a very perceptive person. Therefore, she didn't hesitate to input her consciousness and energy into it. Suddenly, the entire huge imperial palace trembled violently and violently. Then, the ground in the center of the hall began to collapse. Boom, boom, boom. A circular crack appeared in the center of the hall that was tens of thousands of meters long. Then an incomparably mysterious and beautiful light suddenly shot out from the crack. If it was anyone else, they would definitely think twice before acting. However, Queen Poisa did not hesitate, and directly threw herself into the light of the huge crack. Whoosh! In an instant, her entire body moved quickly. Every second, she moved more than tens of thousands of meters, hundreds of thousands of meters, or even faster. This was an energy tunnel. Where did this energy tunnel lead to? If she guessed correctly, it should be the Naga Empire. The old Naga Empire, the ancient land of half-gods, the Naga Empire. Chapter 10-12. The old Naga Empire should have been completely destroyed. At that time, all the demigods of Naga sacrificed their lives to protect a territory of less than 10,000 miles. Then it became a confined space, independent of the chaotic world. This was the so-called New Naga. At that time, Yang Dingtian discovered the New Naga in the Third Dark Realm, so he instinctively felt that the Third Dark Realm was a product of the old Naga Empire's destruction. But using common sense, it did not make sense. Because of the Great Cataclysm 10,000 years ago, it led to the formation of the Torn Space and the Little Western Paradise. In other words, the First Dark Realm and the Second Dark Realm may not be the product of the Great Cataclysm 10,000 years ago, and the Third Dark Realm was probably formed even earlier. So the Third Dark Realm was not caused by the Great Cataclysm 10,000 years ago. But the Naga Empire was indeed destroyed in the Great Cataclysm 10,000 years ago. In that case, the old Naga Empire should not be the Third Dark Realm now. It should be similar to the Sea Serpent Empire, or the ruins of the Torn Space. Then, why was the entrance to the New Naga in the Third Dark Realm? This mystery was incomparably profound, and it probably involved more than just the chaotic world. It rose to another level of energy mystery. But according to common sense, the ruins of the old Naga Empire should exist, and should be similar to the Torn Space. And the Sea Serpent Empire, Mermaid Empire, and Naga Empire had an energy passage. This was very reasonable, because, whether it was the Sea Serpent Empire or the Mermaid Empire, they were like vassals of the Naga Empire. But this was obviously not a space portal. It was an extremely fast energy passage, a bit like the optical fiber of Earth, or a quantum channel. But this energy passage was strong enough to pass through an entire person, and it would not be damaged in the process. Of course, its speed was far inferior to that of light and quantum channels. Although Poisa couldn't calculate it, The speed here should be around tens of thousands of meters per second. Queen Poisa shuttled back and forth in this energy passage at an incomparably fast speed. Within a minute, several thousand kilometers had already passed. In the beginning, Queen Poisa's cultivation was enough to resist such energy shuttling. But towards the end, she could no longer hold on. Finally, everything in front of his eyes darkened, and he fainted from the extreme speed of shuttling. On the old site of Sky Demon City, there was a black pyramid. Wuxia, who had already broken through to the saint level, sat quietly at the core of the pyramid. This black pyramid was one of the most powerful energy arrays in history. How big was this energy pyramid array? It was tens of thousands of square meters wide and hundreds of meters tall. It was like a mountain. The energy formation of the pyramid was made up of an astronomical amount of dark glorious gold, undead crystals, devil eyes, and other precious materials. The merchant palace of the demon city was the richest in the world. They had accumulated hundreds of years' worth of treasures. But in order to build this pyramid, they had almost exhausted everything. In order to power this pyramid array, the energy required was an astronomical figure. So the driving energy of this energy formation came directly from the Skirich imperial capital of the Empire of Darkness. So under this energy formation, anyone was incomparably weak. Even a saint-level powerhouse would be turned into ashes under this energy formation with a single order. So what was this energy formation? What was it used for? It was very simple. This energy formation was a very powerful energy receiver. And Wuxia, who had the netherworld ghost fire, was the receiver's entrance. And in the ghost city of the underworld empire, there was a similar black pyramid, although it looked no different from the one in Sky Demon City. But the materials were different, and the effects were completely opposite. This pyramid in the underworld ghost city was an energy-emitting device. And Dishibian, who also had the netherworld ghost fire, was also the energy-emitting device's entrance. At that time, countless undead would turn into pure energy and be directly emitted from the ghost city's pyramid. Then, they would quickly travel through space and arrive at the Sky Demon City's pyramid receiver. And Dishibian and Wuxia, who had the netherworld ghost fire, were the only ones in the world who could be the pyramid's entrance. Let's make an analogy. The ghost city's pyramid and the Sky Demon City's pyramid were like two huge signal transceivers. Dishibian and Wuxia were like two computers. Countless undead energy was like data. First, it was copied onto Dishibian's computer, and then through the ghost city's emitting device, the energy was emitted. It was received by the Sky Demon City's pyramid signal tower, but this signal tower couldn't store it. So it received the data, and it was all placed on Wuxia's computer. Of course, it was a pity that Wuxia's computer had a limited hard drive, only AT, and a saint-level undead was the size of AT. So after he received this data, he had to immediately export it and place it elsewhere. So, he needed the Dark Shura to build a simulation of the ghost city here. In this way, the countless undead energy downloaded could be stored. Because of the huge energy array of the Tower of Babel, Dishibian's Black Pyramid was relatively smaller. At this time, there were already hundreds of Dark Shura waiting in line inside Dishibian's pyramid. Ghost Emperor Wentian ordered and shouted, "Open!" Suddenly, the energy of the huge dark pyramid and the entire Tower of Babel began to operate. The Tower of Babel in the Netherworld Ghost City crazily absorbed the energy of the Netherworld. In an instant, the Netherworld Empire, which had been shattered, was once again turned upside down. The entire continent, the entire sky, was torn apart again. Countless weak undead creatures were annihilated one after another. This dark pyramid needed to directly transmit a saint-level energy body to the Sky Demon City, tens of thousands of miles away. And there couldn't be much energy loss in the process. How much energy did this require? It was completely unimaginable. Of course, this pyramid's energy transmitter and receiver could turn the undead energy into energy and so on. All the wisdom came from the ruins of the Empire of Darkness. The civilization core of the ruins of the ancient Empire of Darkness was to turn everything into energy and even data. Therefore, Only such an ancient civilization would be able to create such astonishing refining and fusion arrays, as well as the pyramid's receivers and launchers. So in terms of energy civilization, they had already gone very far. Otherwise, with the wisdom of the evil ways and the Temple of Annihilation, they wouldn't be able to create such a pyramid receiver in another 1,000 years. Even the Queen Devil Queen was now using these two devices, but she didn't understand the principle at all. Only the Ghost Emperor Wentian and Yang Dingtian roughly understood this principle. Although Wentian was a liberal arts student, he was still from Peking University, so he still knew a little about this principle. The pyramid and the Tower of Babel began to absorb the energy of the entire underworld empire. Finally, the energy was condensed to the limit, and this energy was enough to operate the pyramid. Suddenly, the ghost city's pyramid began to gradually light up. Countless pieces of black gold and undead crystals started to turn transparent. Finally, the entire dark pyramid became completely transparent, bursting out with an extremely shocking light, and began to spin rapidly. Suddenly, the light of the entire pyramid spun into a huge vortex of light. Dishibian became the center of this vortex. At the same time, the huge dark pyramid on the land of the Sky Demon City also began to operate at full speed under the command of the Queen Devil Queen. The Skirich imperial capital of the Empire of Darkness began to crazily devour the energy of tens of thousands of miles of the continent. Suddenly, the yin-yang mirror and the land of the demon realm were turned upside down again, and the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Countless black clouds shrouded the continent. The energy of tens of thousands of miles of the continent was once again crazily overdrawn and absorbed. Then, the receiving pyramid of the Sky Demon City became darker and darker. In the end, it completely turned into a shocking dark light. It looked like a black hole. It wanted to devour all the light. The entire darkness began to spin rapidly, turning into a huge dark vortex. Wolingzi became the center of this vortex. Enter, Ghost Emperor Wentian ordered. Suddenly, the first saint-level Shura rushed into the energy vortex of the Ghost City Pyramid. In an instant, its body turned into a cloud of energy and shattered in an instant. That's right, after the Dark Shura entered the energy vortex, it was directly crushed and was no longer complete. This energy directly poured into Dishibian's energy vortex. Whoosh! The energy of a saint-level Shura was transmitted tens of thousands of miles in the void in just an instant. For example, whether it was quantum communication or data transmission, it was comparable to the speed of light. Almost instantly, after the Shura was crushed, countless amounts of energy quickly poured out of the vortex exit of the Sky Demon City. At the same time, the Queen Devil Queen said to the Shura Vulture, "You start." The Shura Vulture began to operate its spiritual power as a celestial spiritualist and began to summon all the energy around it. Suddenly, countless shattered energy bodies condensed again and turned into a complete saint-level Shura. This was the power of the Vulture, because the energy transmission between the two pyramids was shattered energy. In other words, the saint-level Shura after entering the vortex was already dead. After being transmitted to the Sky Demon City, the Shura Vulture resurrected it again. Therefore, the Shura Vulture was the most important person in the entire process. Without her, what was transmitted would only be a pair of useless energy powder. With the cooperation of the three, suddenly, one saint-level Shura after another was transmitted from the Underworld Empire to the Sky Demon City. And Queen Poisa's journey was finally over. Perhaps hundreds of thousands of miles, perhaps even further. Queen Poisa rushed out of the energy tunnel and directly fell into a completely unfamiliar environment. Chapter 10:13. After traveling for hundreds of thousands of miles in the energy tunnel, suddenly the rapid travel stopped. She was thrown out of the energy tunnel. At the same time, the energy tunnel disappeared, and she fell into a completely strange environment. Then, with her cultivation as a high-level half-saint, she quickly regained consciousness. She opened her eyes and saw this strange world. She was completely stunned. Yes, this was the old Naga Empire. It was the ruins of the Naga Empire. This was a destroyed Naga Empire. After the destruction of the Great Nirvana, the Naga Empire was the first to bear the brunt. The incomparably huge Naga Empire was completely torn into countless pieces. Originally, it should have been completely shattered into countless pieces like the continents of the human countries in the ancient times, becoming a torn space. But because the Naga Empire was different, in the more than 10,000 years after the destruction, these fragments of the old Naga Empire began to gradually gather together. However, this kind of condensation was completely without any pattern. So at this time, the entire Naga Empire had become an irregular body floating in the void. It was extremely ugly and ferocious. This irregular body was equivalent to a planet floating in the void. However, because it did not have a regular gravitational force like other planets, its rotation was also full of regularity. Just like the irregular body in the ruins of the Naga Empire, whether it was the entire movement or the internal structure, it was completely irregular and full of huge changes. It might move up quickly one moment and down the next. It would move quickly one moment, and suddenly it would not move for a few months. Moreover, just the inside of this irregular body was changing all the time. So this irregular shape was always changing. In short, the ruins of the old Naga Empire had completely become an independent and distorted individual. It was not an independent planet. It was still within the boundary of the chaotic world. However, it was completely independent and almost had no connection with the chaotic world. If it was not still effective with the ancient energy tunnel of the Sea Serpent Empire, perhaps no one could come here. The reason why Queen Poisa could tell at a glance that these were the ruins of the old Naga Empire was because the style of the Naga Empire was too obvious. The old Naga Empire was completely different from the Sea Serpent Empire and the Mermaid Empire. The Sea Serpent Empire and the Mermaid Empire both loved magnificent buildings. In Naga, other than a few buildings, there were very few traces of civilization. Naga worshipped strength and nature, so most of the Naga did not even have houses, only caves. Even if there were buildings, they would only be pyramids. This was because the pyramid was not only a residence, but also an energy array. Therefore, the original Naga Empire was filled with pyramids of various sizes. Moreover, the Naga Empire was a bizarre world. In this world, in the later stages, there were no longer any green trees, green algae, flowers, or anything else. Everything in the empire had been transformed. Its eternal main force was energy. Therefore, even if every stone and every piece of soil was transformed into a crystal that was suitable for condensing energy. Therefore, in the end, every inch of land in the Naga Empire was transformed into a crystal. Then, these crystals were used to build pyramids one after another. The Nagas, in order to pursue power, had completely reached the point of chi deviation. In the beginning, the Naga Empire had obvious characteristics of the seabed and seawater. Later, the Naga discovered that seawater greatly affected the transmission of energy, so the entire Naga Empire dried up. Later, the Naga discovered that being too far away from the two suns and moons for a long time was not good for the growth and devouring of energy. Therefore, they penetrated the land of the entire empire. Not only could they see the sun, but they could also condense the light of the two suns and moons, and then shine it into their pyramids from a single 10,000-mile cave. In short, in order to pursue power, the demigod Naga carried out almost insane transformation of the entire Naga Empire. Therefore, anyone who saw the Naga Empire would not think that it was beautiful at all, because it had completely broken away from the beauty that a civilized empire should have. The entire world had been transformed into crystals. There were no flowers, plants, trees, or any other creatures. There was only Naga and their pyramids. You said that the soil could not be transformed into all kinds of crystals? That was a joke. Just like the humans on Earth, they could turn rocks into computer CPUs, they could turn rocks into Gorilla Glass, and they could turn charcoal into diamonds. It was a piece of cake for the demigod Naga to transform soil into any crystal. Therefore, the crystal civilization advocated by Yang Dingtian had developed to the extreme in the Naga Empire. However, the Naga Empire was a little biased. They did not care about the X crystal that would explode, or the green wave crystal that could increase productivity. They only cared about one thing, which was to absorb and condense more energy. All the crystals could only serve this one purpose. Queen Poisa, as a next-generation Naga, had a little understanding of the basic appearance of the Naga Empire. She fell into the world. As far as the eye could see, there were crystals everywhere, all kinds of crystals. There were twisted, square, round, moving, and motionless crystals of various colors. The entire ground was filled with crystals. Not far ahead there was a pyramid. A Naga once lived there. However, the pyramid was upside down at this time. Queen Poisa slowly stood up and walked toward the pyramid. Along the way, she saw countless holes and cracks. Some of the holes inside even reached tens of thousands of miles, directly penetrating the irregular structure of the ruins. When the venomous queen passed by, she suddenly did a handstand and her delicate body flew out. Oh, I understand. This crystal crack was anti-gravity. Queen Poisa used her profound chi to stabilize her body and continued to walk forward. She passed by another huge hole. This time, she used her profound chi to stabilize her body and carefully walked over. In the end, there was no anti-gravity. Suddenly, pa! A huge bolt of lightning suddenly burst out from this hole. Oh, this huge hole was a huge electric field generated by the crystals. Next, Queen Poisa carefully avoided any cracks and caves. Because, under the effect of gravity, all the crystals should have been condensed and glued together. The reason why there were all kinds of cracks was definitely because several kinds of energy gathered together and produced a strong repulsion, so it would form all kinds of energy fields. And such an energy field was undoubtedly extremely dangerous. It was also because of countless cracks and big holes, causing the entire irregular structure of the ruins to distort and change at all times. It would always be an irregular structure. Queen Poisa's destination was very simple. It was the Green Pyramid 100 miles ahead. Of course, the flying speed was faster. However, the energy density and air density were different in every place here. Moreover, all kinds of energy fields and all kinds of positions were distorted and changing. Therefore, flying here at high speed was very dangerous. You could fall into the abyss at any time, or even be torn into pieces. The only thing you could do was to walk over carefully. Along the way, Queen Poisa carefully avoided many cracks and holes. Finally, she arrived in front of the inverted pyramid. This green pyramid was about 300 meters tall and was directly embedded in a crack. Queen Poisa flew up gently. Sure enough, this pyramid was an anti-gravity field. Queen Poisa had to be careful not to fall into the deep space. Then, she looked for the entrance to the pyramid floor by floor, side by side. What? You said to smash an entrance directly? Don't joke. This pyramid was made of powerful energy crystals, and the demigod Naga once lived inside. It was completely impossible for a demigod sea snake clan to smash open a Naga's pyramid. Queen Poisa searched hard. After a few hours, she finally found the entrance to the pyramid. This was because there were 2 sea serpent sculptures guarding this place. In ancient times, these sea serpent sculptures could move and fight. However, after the Great Nirvana, these sea snake sculptures had completely turned into sculptures. In front of her, there was a golden door, carved with runes. This golden energy door could block almost any creature in the world. The runes on it were equivalent to a password to enter the door. Only the owner and a few guests would know the password to enter the pyramid. However, after the Great Nirvana, most of the energy fields changed and became ineffective. Therefore, some of these energy rune doors were still useful. Some were distorted, and a considerable number of rune doors had become ineffective. Queen Poisa didn't know this. She instinctively went forward to push the door. This was a very dangerous thing to do, because if the energy runes on the door were effective, with her cultivation, she would probably be directly turned into ashes and smashed to pieces if she pushed the door directly. However, it was clear that Queen Poisa was very lucky. This golden energy rune door was easily pushed open, revealing a deep tunnel. Queen Poisa stepped forward and slowly walked in. Inside, the gravity field was normal again. Moreover, as Queen Poisa stepped on the crystal in the tunnel, the surroundings immediately lit up. This was the light of the crystal itself. Even though there were no decorations, The interior of the pyramid was sparkling and translucent. It was filled with a magnificent sense of beauty. Queen Poisa passed through the deep tunnel and came to the deepest part of the pyramid. In the center of the pyramid, there was a pillar of light. At this time, it was already a little weak. This pillar of light was the condensed celestial chi light pillar of the pyramid's energy array. Naga was constantly devouring the energy of heaven and earth under this light pillar. The energy density of this condensed light pillar was completely incomparable to that of the human's celestial chi formation, and it was also incomparable to that of the ancient martial arts civilization. Even the celestial chi formations of the Sea Serpent Empire and the Mermaid Empire were not even 1%, 1,000th, or 1/10,000th of this. This was because in order to break through to the demigod realm, Naga had transformed its entire world, removing all flowers, plants, animals, and algae. All stones, soil, and so on were transformed into energy crystals. Therefore, the energy density and pressure of the Naga Empire were incomparably shocking. It was probably 1,000 times that of the ancient martial arts civilization of the human kingdoms, and more than 10,000 times that of the current human kingdoms. Only under such energy density and pressure could one reach the demigod realm through cultivation. But it was a pity that the Naga Empire had been destroyed, and this shocking energy density naturally did not exist anymore. However, even if it was the ruins of the old Naga Empire, the energy density was still incomparable to that of the human kingdoms. Therefore, the pillar of light in this pyramid was powerful, and it was also incomparable to the celestial chi formation of the human kingdoms. Queen Poisa carefully walked to the bottom of the pillar of light. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Immediately, an endless amount of energy crazily poured into her profound veins and into her energy sea. Even with Queen Poisa's cultivation and Xian meridians, she could not withstand it. The energy density here was at least a few hundred times that of the human's celestial chi formation. With Yang Dingtian's Xian meridians, if he cultivated here, he could break through to the saint level in a short time. Of course, with Queen Poisa's cultivation and Xian meridians, she could also break through to the saint level. But the venomous queen immediately dodged like a viper. Then, she spat out a mouthful of blue blood. Then, she sat on the ground and immediately took out an elixir and swallowed it. Then she used all her cultivation to expel all the energy that had just surged into her body. The energy of this pillar of light was incomparably shocking, but it had already been distorted and polluted, because the great destruction of the ancient times had caused the Naga Empire to be destroyed. At this moment, the entire ruins had become an irregular object. Countless energy fields fused together and repelled each other. Therefore, any energy pillar of light had already been distorted and changed. If one directly swallowed it, it was guaranteed that one would die. Of course, Yang Dingtian was an exception, because he had the heaven-defying yin-yang qi transformation technique. He could refine any xian qi into pure xian qi that could enter the energy reserve. Thinking of this, Queen Poisa was instantly ecstatic. She had discovered a treasure trove. If Yang Dingtian cultivated here, he would definitely be able to break through to the saint level in a very short period of time. At this moment, Queen Poisa almost couldn't help but want to immediately go back and call Yang Dingtian over. But soon she remembered something. Can I still go back? That energy tunnel seemed to have disappeared after sending her to the ruins of the old Naga Empire. Moreover, it should have been a one-way tunnel. In other words, she couldn't go back. She couldn't go back to the human countries? Or perhaps there was an energy tunnel that could go from the old Naga Empire to the Sea Serpent Empire. If there was, then she could still go back. But now, the Naga Empire had been distorted to this extent. Was that energy tunnel still there? If it was still there, wasn't that energy tunnel in the hands of the Naga Empire's empress? But the Naga Empire's empress should have died in the ancient times. She should have been destroyed together with the Great Destruction. At this moment, a fierce and cold voice suddenly came from a dark corner. No matter who you are, leave this place immediately, or I will kill you. Hearing this voice, Queen Poisa's delicate body suddenly trembled. She knew that this voice belonged to the Nagaduga Shuang. She had come here as well. Chapter 10:14. Schwanger, it's me. I'm the Naga of your next generation, Queen Poisa said carefully. I don't care who you are. Get out of here immediately, or I'll bite you to death. Suddenly, the Naga Duga Shuang's voice became as loud as thunder. Then a strong wind swept over. A huge Naga several hundred meters long swam fiercely in front of Queen Poisa and coiled around her body in an instant. Then, it opened its sharp mouth and placed it directly on Queen Poisa's neck. At this time, the Naga Duga Shuang still had not returned to its human form. It still looked like a dragon-like Naga. After a Naga completed its transformation, it would take a long time to return to its human form. During this time, it needed to be in an absolutely safe place. At this time, Naga was very bloody and cruel. It could be said that if it had not smelled Poisa's familiar scent, it would have eaten Poisa and turned her into its own energy. The Naga Duga Shuang stared fiercely at Queen Poisa for a moment and wanted to bite Poisa to death several times. However, the instinctive repulsion deep in its soul stopped it. In the Upper Valley generation, whether it was the sea snake or the mermaid, after giving birth to Naga, they would never meet again. Basically, they would never see each other again for the rest of their lives. But the Nagas would never kill their mother. After finally giving up the idea of biting Poisa to death, the Naga Duga Shuang wrapped its snake tail around Poisa's body and flung her violently. Immediately, Queen Venom Sha was unable to resist at all. She was sent flying several thousand meters away and was thrown out of the pyramid. Then, the Naga Duga Shuang suddenly spewed out a terrifying flame. In the flame full of terrifying energy, the crystals at the entrance of the pyramid began to melt and flow. In the end, the entire entrance was completely sealed. Queen Poisa fell to the ground outside the pyramid, but she was not injured. She knew that Naga did not have any rationality or memories at this time. Therefore, if he wanted to talk to her, he would have to wait until she completely regained her human form. When the time came, the Naga Duga Shuang would take the initiative to return to the human world to help young Dingtian. Or rather, it would be more accurate to say that they would copulate with him. Naga were very loyal and infatuated with their mates. Therefore, in ancient times, Naga was always single. Otherwise, they would be in pairs and be together all the time, as if they were conjoined twins. After Shuang regained her human form, the pain and loneliness of being away from her partner would make her want to return to Yang Dingtian's side. However, this would probably take a long time. At this time, Naga Shuang had already closed the door of the pyramid. She was alone in the final phase of the transformation, gradually transforming into a complete human form. Queen Poisa found a corner of the pyramid and sat down cross-legged, although there would be no life in the ruins of the old Naga Empire. But Queen Poisa was still protecting Duga Shuang. At this time, the two pyramids of energy in the Nether Ghost City and the Sky Demon City were still operating. After the energy of the Saint-level Shura was shattered, they were transported from the Underworld Empire. Then, the Shura Vulture resurrected them one by one, and they became complete Saint-level Shura energy. Of course, they had already lost their bodies. Therefore, the first thing they did after being resurrected was to follow the Devil Queen's magic wand into the Empire of Darkness, where they used the refining array and the fusion array to regain a new powerful body. After a full 4 hours, more than 100 Shura were all transported. Among them, nearly half were Saint-level Shura, and the rest were high-level Saint-level Shura. Queen Devil Queen looked at this batch of powerful Shura, her heart filled with excitement and joy. This was probably the most powerful martial force in the human countries. She had finally transferred this force from the Underworld Empire to the human countries. Prince Li Ming suddenly said, "Your Majesty Devil Queen, the Saint-level experts in our hands now far exceed the Tiando League. Why don't we just send our martial force directly to wipe out the upper echelons of the Council of Light and capture Yang Dingtian?" Queen Devil Queen said, "Of course, but we'll talk about it after we win the Doomsday Battle." Prince Li Ming was speechless. He didn't know why Queen Devil Queen was so obsessed with the Doomsday Battle. This was just a game, okay? Prince Li Ming even felt that he really couldn't let a woman become the leader of the evil ways. He was really too impulsive. After losing to Yang Dingtian in the Doomsday Battle, Queen Devil Queen had even deviated from the right track, wholeheartedly agreeing to the Doomsday Battle. She completely couldn't distinguish between priority and priority. The Temple of Annihilation's most important mission at the moment was Yang Dingtian himself. Let the Demon King possess Yang Dingtian's body and obtain the greater space technique in Yang Dingtian's mind. But Prince Li Ming really couldn't do anything about this. The Temple of Annihilation's hierarchy was extremely strict. Everything was decided by the ranks of the evil spirits. Therefore, as a first-class evil spirit, no matter what, he couldn't go against the primordial evil spirit Queen Devil Queen. Queen Devil Queen looked at these powerful Shura and ordered, "Start digging, build the underground ghost city." Yes, all the Shura responded. Then, under the guidance of the magic staff, these hundreds of Shura left the Empire of Darkness, but they didn't leave the ground. More than 100 Shura quickly shuttled through the thousands of miles of land under the Sky Demon City. Underground, they began to build a new ghost city that could accommodate the undead army. The so-called new ghost city was to ensure that it was filled with the aura of the netherworld's energy. Countless undead stayed here, and the energy wouldn't dissipate. Therefore, the so-called new ghost city was equivalent to another kind of energy array. It used a kind of netherworld aura to envelop the entire area. At the same time, the two pyramids were still continuously teleporting countless Shura over. Suddenly more and more Shura appeared, hundreds, thousands. All the Shura, after being teleported over and revived by Vulture, were immediately sent to the Empire of Darkness and received a new body. Of course, although the Empire of Darkness had a lot of Shura corpses in storage, there were still thousands of them. However, it wasn't enough for a few thousand Azuras. Therefore, most of the Azura's bodies were formed by refining and fusing formations, using ordinary energy bodies. After all, the Shura had been destroyed for who knew how many tens of thousands of years. Even in the ruins of the Empire of Darkness, there weren't many Shura corpses to be found. As for Vulture, it was even more unique. For example, Medusa was extremely rare among the Naga tribe. Then the spiritual type Hell Shura was also very rare among the Shura tribe. The Empire of Darkness only had one. After reviving more than 1,500 Shura, Vulture's spiritual power was finally exhausted. Then, the pyramids of the Netherworld Ghost City and the Sky Demon City stopped operating and teleporting. It would take a few days for Vulture to fully recover its spiritual power to operate again. Now more than 1,000 Shura were teleported over, and it was enough to build the underground ghost city. And as the eye of the pyramid, Wolingzi couldn't leave the pyramid. The Shura Vulture dragged its tired body and flew back to the Empire of Darkness. The ground was thousands of miles away from the dark material layer. There was a huge passage in these thousands of miles. At the end of the passage, the Devil Queen's magic wand was floating there. As long as people of the evil ways wanted to enter the Empire of Darkness, the magic wand would lead the way and melt the dark material. There was no need for the Devil Queen to be present. Just like how no one could take away Yang Dingtian's soul sword, no one could take away the Devil Queen's soul sword. This magic wand was the soul sword. Even if one wanted to destroy it, they couldn't do it. This was because its cultivation was also incomparably powerful. The Vulture followed the huge passage and was about to enter the Empire of Darkness. Suddenly, it found that several holes appeared on the left side of the huge passage. The Vulture was curious and flew into the hole. After flying for tens of thousands of meters, then, it suddenly saw a huge underground square and an underground hall that had been built. More than 1,000 Shura. Some were digging, some were building. They were so fast that in just one day, they had dug out such a huge square and built such a large hall. The most powerful group of Shura were using powerful energy to transform the hall made of mud. The original mud was all transformed into a kind of black, hard special crystal. This group of Shura had such an ability, and the hall that had been transformed by the Shura directly emitted a dark aura of the netherworld. The Shura slowly landed on the square, wanting to take a closer look at the ghost city that the Shura were building. But when the Shura saw the Vulture, they stopped what they were doing. Their eyes were filled with fanaticism and adoration as they looked at the vulture. Because the body of the vulture was an extremely rare spiritual type shadow queen of the Shura. She was the most beautiful and charming woman in the Shura, and her status was also very high. The vulture didn't feel uncomfortable being stared at by countless Shura with fanatical eyes. In fact, she enjoyed it very much. She just liked being the center of attention. She came in front of a Shura and said, "I have a question that I don't understand. Can I ask you?" The Shura trembled and said, Of course. The Shura vulture said, "The Shura of Hell used to compete with the Naga for supremacy of the world tens of thousands of years ago. Why is it obeying the orders of the Ghost Emperor now? Isn't it self-deprecating?" Only the vulture would say something so careless. The half-holy Shura sighed and said, "We are loyal to the Ghost Emperor. It is a contract from tens of thousands of years ago." "Contract? What contract?" the Shura vulture asked. The half-holy Shura said, "We have always been hunted by the Naga. The entire Shura was reduced from tens of millions to hundreds of thousands. More than 10,000 years ago, our last Shura was found by the Naga in the sinkhole. If we were all killed, it would mean the complete extinction of the Shura. In order not to be completely wiped out, we finally chose to escape." "Escape to the Underworld Empire?" the Shura vulture said. "The Underworld Empire is strong, but the Naga doesn't care. They can easily destroy it." The half-holy Shura said, "The Naga demigod clan is extremely powerful, but they are only afraid of the undead in the Underworld Empire." "Impossible," the Shura vulture said. "The Naga are very powerful. How can they be afraid of the undead?" "You misunderstand," the half-holy Shura said. "This is not fear but disgust. Just like a beautiful woman, although very powerful, will be disgusted by leeches. Just like stepping on feces, you will be disgusted for a few days. Even if you cut the feces into pieces, it will be useless. Therefore, the Naga avoid the undead in the Underworld Empire." "Oh, I understand," the Shura vulture said. "And then?" The half-holy Shura said, "In order to completely escape the Naga's pursuit, we can only hide in the Underworld Empire. But as Shura, we can't enter the Underworld Empire. Only the undead can go there. And we Shura are not human. Even if we die, we can't enter the Underworld Empire. So we signed a contract with the Netherworld Ghost Emperor. We Shura are loyal to the Netherworld Ghost Emperor in exchange for the Underworld Empire's acceptance. So we all committed suicide and became the Shura of Death. We entered the Underworld Empire and received protection to escape the Naga's pursuit." The vulture said, "But, not long after, the Great Nirvana was destroyed and the Naga became extinct. If you clenched your teeth and persevered, you might have already become the overlord of the world." The half-holy Shura smiled bitterly. "This is fate. We are not destined to become the overlord of the world." The vulture's eyes suddenly turned and said, "By the way, is my position in the Shura very high?" The half-holy Shura said, "Of course, you are the shadow queen of the Shura." The vulture's breathing suddenly became rapid, and his eyes lit up. There was a faint impulse in his heart, or perhaps an idea. Of course, it was not a plan. The vulture had always been going with the flow, and did not have a plan. So, she wanted to do something, but she did not know how to say it or how to do it. She could not say that the Shura all betrayed the Netherworld Ghost Emperor and obey her orders. The Shura in front of her only admired her, but they were not loyal to her. Moreover, it seemed that these races were very particular about contracts. So the vulture had a very, very shallow plan in his heart, using the beauty trap to make these Shura help him, and even obey him. However, the beauty trap was one thing, but he could not let himself be touched. For some reason, the vulture was very concerned about this now. It was as if he had been reborn and became a noble princess again. If he was touched, his golden body would immediately be destroyed, and he would become the disgraced vulture from before. Thinking of this, the vulture's beautiful eyes turned, and she sat down leisurely. Her delicate curves were incomparably seductive, and her face became incomparably beautiful and seductive. "I'm very curious about the Shura race. Tell me, who is your chief?" The vulture's eyes turned and she said in a coarse voice. The half-holy Shura's soul almost flew out of his body at that moment. At this moment, the Queen High Exan, who had disappeared for a long time, reappeared in the center of the sea 80,000 miles away from the eastern cloud state. She led the last few hundred Naga experts and swam in a direction. Chapter 10:15. Among the last Naga experts, there were Viper Mo, Viper Z, and other former confidants of Queen Poisa. Of course, most of them were her own confidants. On that day, Yang Dingtian's Naga royalty sword spirit killed the Legion of Doom, and a large number of Naga experts. Of course, the Naga royalty sword spirit's lethality to the Naga race was far less than it was to the Legion of Doom. Therefore, many of the Naga experts at that time had already become captives of the human countries. Under the support of the Queen Devil Queen's magic staff, hundreds of the most powerful Naga experts followed Queen High Exan and escaped. Queen High Exan, who had successfully escaped, did not immediately enter the Empire of Darkness. Instead, she went to her own Naga Empire's holy land. She knew that Yang Dingtian would definitely chase after them soon, so she and the Naga experts carried out the final devouring of the Hell's demonic array. They completely overdrew and devoured the pyramid formed by tens of millions of lives, killing an astronomical number of lives. Then, she took all the Naga experts and escaped. Viper Mo, Viper Z, and the rest of the Naga race were not dead because Queen High Exan wanted to use them as the last hostages. If she was forced into a corner by Yang Dingtian again, these hostages might be able to save her life. Although she was saved by the Devil Queen, Queen High Exan was not prepared to stay in the Empire of Darkness, because there was no place for her in the Empire of Darkness. At that time, after the Queen Devil Queen suffered a great defeat, she did not care about High Exan's whereabouts at all. Queen High Exan led the last of the Naga people towards the east. On a deserted island, she had a final thought about her life and future. What should she do next? Her Snakeman Empire was finished, and Yang Dingtian was also making rapid progress. Soon, he would completely surpass her. In the entire world, there was no place for High Exan. The only way seemed to be to completely rely on the Demon King Wentian. However, she was disgusted with the Demon King on the throne of darkness from the bottom of her heart. He was completely like a machine, not a human. Moreover, she was naturally unwilling to be under the fence of others. Most importantly, Yang Dingtian's regal stance at the final moment of the World Extermination War made High Exan feel as though she had seen a predestined feeling. Yang Dingtian was truly the representative of the god of chaos. He was truly the child of destiny. The Empire of Darkness and the Legion of Doom were completely invincible. However, the Naga royalty, the Sword of Darkness, the Empire of Darkness, the Legion of Doom. Queen High Exan still remembered that scene. It was a scene that could not even appear in her dreams. High Exan would never forget that scene for the rest of her life. Tens of thousands of huge golden swords suddenly appeared from the east. Then, like a miracle, they melted the overwhelming Legion of Doom. Using this unbelievable method, Yang Dingtian obtained the final victory. If this was not a miracle, then what was it? If this was not destiny, then what was it? Therefore, Queen High Exan suddenly had a thought. Yang Dingtian was simply invincible. Although his cultivation was still far from the Demon King Wentian, the final winner would definitely be Yang Dingtian. Therefore, in an instant, Queen High Exan even wanted to change her position. However, she quickly extinguished this thought. In front of Yang Dingtian, she was already unforgivable. She was already on the path to death. In fact, in the entire world, there was no place for Queen High Exan. Although Queen High Exan's cultivation was still stronger than Yang Dingtian's. However, High Exan knew very well that there was no stage for her in this world. In fact, she had never been a big character in this world. Whether it was the Evil Ways or the Tiando League, she was just a troublemaker who created a great momentum. For a very long period of time, Queen Seaheart felt that she could control the clouds with a flip of her hand, and summon the rain with a flip of her hand. However, from the beginning to the end, it did not take more than 3 days for her Naga Empire to truly stand on the stage. The Naga Empire's army of tens of millions was wiped out in an instant, and she instantly became a clown. Hyexian was a woman who was never willing to be ordinary. She would never give in at any time. At any time, she was not willing to be in the limelight of others. At that time, she could not stand the loneliness of the Naga tribe's territory, so she came out to wander the world. And Queen Poisa chose to stay in the territory to take care of the Naga tribe that was hatched later. Therefore, when the Naga tribe became the Naga Empire, Poisa became the unique leader and the queen of the empire. At that time, Hyexian was not willing to be a supporting role for Poisa, even if Poisa brought her up, even if Poisa completely treated her as her biological sister. Therefore she brazenly rebelled. In the end she failed. Her cultivation was greatly damaged and she lost everything. Even though she did not die because of Poisa's mercy, she was expelled from the Naga Empire. However, she still did not give up. She played the role of a saintess, roped in the half-human tribe who were unwilling to submit, and established a resistance army. In the end, she used Yang Dingtian with a conspiracy. Of course, the root cause was Queen Poisa's sudden weakness. She completed the reversal, killed Queen Poisa, and became the new queen of the Naga Empire. And this time, she once again suffered a fatal blow. Even in the overall situation of the world this time, she played the role of a clown. Her Naga Empire was completely wiped out. She despaired for a long time, but after this period of time, she pulled herself together again. She would never give in, never be willing to be a small character. She was not willing to hide under anyone's light, whether it was the Demon King Wentian or Yang Dingtian. She wanted to be the unique protagonist. My existence is to change this world, to subvert this world. I must leave an indelible mark on this world. Even if I become the worst person, I will make myself the protagonist of this world. This was what Hyexian told herself over and over again. She could play the role of any beauty. When she was needed to be a saintess, she could be a saintess. When she was needed to be a demon, she could be crueler than the Demon King Wentian. On the deserted island, she thought for more than a month. What should she do next? She wanted to become strong, incomparably strong, stronger than Yang Dingtian and the Demon King Wentian. Then what should she do? There was no chance in the human countries. The Dark Realm had also been fatally destroyed and could no longer make her stronger. Therefore, a faint direction guided her. After more than a month of thinking, this direction became clearer. In the ancient era, although the Sea Serpent Empire was not as strong as the Naga Empire, it was more than 100 times stronger than the martial arts civilization of this world. And her talent and bloodline were stronger than the ancient Sea Serpent clan. After all, she was born as the next generation of Naga. Her mission was originally to produce Naga. Therefore, she was stronger than the ordinary Sea Serpent clan. The reason why she was so weak was because of the environment. The human countries were no longer suitable for the strong. Then, what about the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire? In fact, she had been traveling the whole world for hundreds of years. There were two purposes. One was to find her mother country, the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. The other was to find the Naga Empire. Now, she heard from Yang Dingtian that the Naga Empire had been completely destroyed. Nothing was left, only a new Naga that was imprisoned in space. Therefore, the Sea Serpent Empire was the only direction. Moreover, she was a Sea Serpent clan, so the ruins of the Sea Serpent Empire might be more suitable for her. And she knew a little about the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire after hundreds of years of searching. Of course, she also reported part of the information to Queen Poisa. At that time, Hyexian had once found traces of the Sea Serpent Empire in the Devil's Sea in the extreme southeast. To be precise, it was the head of a petrified Sea Serpent clan. Maybe it was an earthquake, a whirlpool, a tsunami, or an ancient sea beast. In short, she had seen a petrified head of a Sea Serpent clan near the Devil's Sea. Therefore, she concluded that the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire should be in the Devil's Sea. However, the Devil's Sea was extremely dangerous. There were earth-shattering tsunamis, terrible whirlpools, shocking lightning, and extremely powerful ancient sea beasts. Even with her half-saint cultivation, it would be difficult to survive there. Therefore, going to the Devil's sea was like a suicide mission. But now she had no choice at all. She had reached a dead end. The only thing she could do was to risk her life and survive. The place I'm about to take you to is the most terrible and dangerous place in the world. Most of the Naga clan will die there, including me. But the Naga clan has reached a dead end. If we don't take a gamble, there will be no space for us to live in this world. Our Naga clan will be completely destroyed. We represent not only hundreds of lives but a clan. We come from one of the ancient overlords, the Sea Serpent Empire. The place I'm taking you to is our motherland, the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. I know many of you hate me, but let go of your hatred, no matter who you were loyal to before. Whether it's Yang Dingtian or Poisa. Now, you can only be loyal to the Naga clan and fight for a future. After the declaration, Queen Hai Xian was full of determination. She took the last remaining Naga clan and swam towards the Devil's Sea. She wanted to find the future of the Naga clan and her own future there. Under the crazy work of more than 1,000 Shura, the underground ghost city was getting bigger and bigger. At the same time, the netherworld energy of the underground ghost city had completely affected the land. The ground above the ghost city had begun to turn black. Even the sky was shrouded in dark energy, which prevented the sunlight from shining in. If Yang Dingtian saw this scene, he would definitely be reminded of Warcraft and Starcraft. In Warcraft, the undead race's base would expand. The surrounding ground would be polluted, and not even a blade of grass would grow. Everything would turn into a disgusting dark swamp. The expansion of the Zerg base was similar. The surrounding ground would also be corroded into a disgusting swamp. A few days and nights had passed. The underground ghost city had been built up to a radius of a few miles. The land above ground, which spanned dozens of miles, had all turned black. Not only had the land in the center turned black, it had also begun to rot. The sky here was completely dark, and no sunlight could shine in. It had completely turned into a dark, deathly sky. In this environment, the undead had already begun to live. The plan of the evil ways and the underworld empire was to build an underground ghost city that spanned thousands of miles. It would be able to squeeze in billions of undead. Therefore, when the time came, half of the Fringe's territory would become a ghost city of the underworld. In order to keep it a secret, the Devil Queen had once again sent out tens of thousands of dark vile dragons to completely seal off the sky within a few hundred miles of the underground ghost city, preventing the Council of Light's Demon Vulture army from entering. Although the Devil Queen had kept it a secret, the Council of Light basically knew about the construction of the underground ghost city in Sky Demon City. Of course, most of it was just a guess, because, from the Devil Queen's unprecedented attention on Wolingzi, it could be inferred that the netherworld ghost flame in his body was the key to bringing the undead to the human countries. And when the undead entered the human countries, they had to build an underground ghost city. Therefore, when Nero arrived in the sky above Sky Demon City, wearing the demonic spirit mist cloak, and saw the black shadow of the new underground ghost city, she was completely sure that the evil ways wanted to turn Sky Demon City, and even the Fringe, into a new ghost city of the underworld. It would become the base of the undead army and the front line of the Second Great War. In about a few months, there would be countless undead coming south from the Fringe and invading the entire world. It sounded even more terrifying than the Empire of Darkness and the Legion of Doom, that were tens of millions of undead, because the undead army was immune to all damage, except for the lightning element. Even the Naga avoided the undead like snakes and scorpions, although the Naga could definitely release lightning attacks. But Yang Dingtian's Naga royalty sword soul could not release lightning attacks. Therefore, facing an undead army of billions should be very hopeless. However, Yang Dingtian wasn't worried at all, because after Yang Dingtian opened a door for the Council of Light's generator and research on electricity, it was completely much better than Yang Dingtian had imagined. After Yang Dingtian gave a simple generator model, the Warlock team and the secret factory manufactured hundreds of large-scale generators in a few days. Of course, the so-called large-scale generators were those that were tens of meters or hundreds of meters in size. Moreover, there was a replacement almost every 3 days. Therefore, Only a month later, when the crystal and kerosene hybrid generator appeared in front of Yang Dingtian, Yang Dingtian was completely shocked. Is this still the generator that I gave the prototype generator? However, there was still a huge problem in front of him. That was, the lightning energy could only be transmitted through conductors, so its lethality to the undead was very limited. It could only be transmitted through the ground and the city walls. This was too limited. Moreover, many undead could fly. A warlock said that if the lightning energy could be like the lightning of nature, discharging electricity in the air, that would be great. In that case, almost any place could become a death zone for the undead army. They could even build a huge death trap. Then they could annihilate all the undead army in one fell swoop. They could create an even more glorious victory than the last world extermination war. Unfortunately, they could not go to infinite discharge. Moreover, according to the warlock's speculation, it would take a few decades for the research in this area to be completed. But an image flooded into Yang Dingtian's mind. The Tunguska explosion in the Siberian region of the Russian Empire in 1908 was equivalent to the power of 1,000 atomic bombs. According to legend, the cause of this explosion was an experiment by the heaven-defying god Tesla. What experiment? Wireless discharge. How to achieve wireless discharge? It was very simple. Tesla coils to create artificial lightning. How did he know about Tesla coils? Even a fake fan would know. At that time, in order to act cool, Yang Dingtian had tried to build one himself, but in the end, he didn't have the guts. After buying the things, he didn't really do it. The Tesla coils were composed of an induction coil, a transformer, an igniter, 2 large capacitors, and a transformer with only a few primary coils. However, could some of these things be done in the chaotic world? Thus, Yang Dingtian explained the manufacturing of the Tesla coils and the principle of wireless discharge. In the end, the warlock leader said firmly, "No problem, it's easy. As long as your principle is correct, evil ways will only fail even more miserably in the Second World Extermination War. The victory of the Council of Light will only be more glorious." Chapter 10:16. Next, Yang Dingtian drew all the Tesla principles and drawings in detail. Then he was very worried about how to make the transformer in the chaos world. At that time, he was just a fake fan. He purely saw a lot of foreign teenagers playing with the Tesla coil there, and thought it was cool. So he wanted to play with it himself. He knew the principle of the transformer. He had learned it in high school, but he didn't know how to make it at all. As a result, the warlock leader waved his hand disdainfully and said, "We have already made hundreds of them, and have started to use them." Yang Dingtian was stunned. Next, Yang Dingtian asked if there were any problems with the sensors, igniters, mutual inductors, and capacitors. The warlock leader said that there was a small problem with the capacitors, but it would be fine in 2 or 3 days at most. As long as Sect Master Yang's principle is correct. Yang Dingtian couldn't help but feel a little guilty. He had also learned about capacitors, but he really forgot about it. Who would remember that? However, he had seen this thing countless times. He didn't know how many capacitors there were on the computer motherboard, but he really didn't know how to make it. Next, just when Yang Dingtian was worried about not being able to make the capacitors, the warlock leader came to report that the entire Tesla coil had been made. Yang Dingtian was stunned. So fast. The warlock leader nodded and said that the new generation of generators had come out. This time, they completely abandoned the backward method of burning kerosene, and all of them were powered by crystals. Then, Yang Dingtian asked about the power of the generator. The warlock leader pondered for a while and then said, "It's about 5,000 kilowatts. At present, the main crystal unit is this one. Of course, we can make it bigger. We will try to include the 6th generation X crystal. At that time, the power of several sets of crystals may be much higher. Of course, the next large-scale production of crystal units is this 5,000 kilowatt one." Instantly, Yang Dingtian was shaken until he was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. Since when did the warlocks in the chaos world know the unit of kilowatts? Oh, there were many units and formulas in the related principles and materials that he gave them. He thought that these warlocks wouldn't delve too deeply into it, and would only know how to make it. He didn't expect these warlocks to have gone deeper than he had imagined. If these people were to return to Earth, they would all be top students and scientists. Then, the warlock leader stroked his chin and said, "However, regarding the wireless discharge of this Tesla coil, I think it is necessary to build a super crystal power generator set. When the time comes, the number of crystal stones needed may be astronomical. Maybe when the time comes, I will report this material to the sect master." Yang Dingtian. No problem. I'm an outsider now, and you're the experts. You have the final say. The warlock leader licked his lips, as if he wanted to say something, but hesitated. Yang Dingtian. What do you want to say? Say it. The warlock chief said. We may modify your Tesla coil. Yours seems a little primitive. Therefore, the one we build might be very big. In Yang Dingtian's mind, he immediately thought of Tesla's Wardenclyffe broadcasting tower, and his idea of using the Earth as an inner conductor, and the Earth's ionosphere as an outer conductor. Then he would achieve a global wireless power supply. Of course, this group of crazy warlocks in front of him definitely wouldn't think so far ahead. However, when they said it would be big, it should only be big. The warlock leader said. When the time comes, the power of the lightning we create may be even higher than your mystic fire lightning, or even much higher. Yang Dingtian immediately understood the warlock's feelings. Yang Dingtian's mystic fire lightning was already one of the most powerful energies in the world. When he released the mystic fire lightning with all his strength, if he condensed it to attack an undead, then, even if the undead was a saint-level monarch, it would be completely unable to withstand it. However, the warlocks could use other means to directly surpass Yang Dingtian's mystic fire lightning. This almost meant that the crystal power civilization had surpassed the martial arts civilization. Yang Dingtian didn't reject this result. By the way, Sect Master Yang Dingtian, are you planning to set the battlefield in Cloud Sky City? Yang Dingtian asked. Yes, Yang Dingtian said. That's good. When the time comes, we will produce thousands of mobile crystal power units, and then hundreds of fixed super-large crystal power units. When the time comes, it will be enough to cover the entire Cloud Sky City with lightning. It can be said that no matter how many undead armies come, it will be meaningless. The warlock leader thought of that scene, and couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. He said, "But Sect Master, do you have a plan for how to prevent our people from being injured by lightning? If you don't have one, I have a few plans for you to choose from." Yang Dingtian was also considered a little top student. In front of this big top student, he directly waved his hand and said, "You all submit a few plans, I will make the final decision. Of course, you all have to choose the best plan." "Yes, Sect Master." Then the warlock leader, who was smelly all over and hadn't bathed for a few days, fanatically went. He would open his mouth and apply for a batch of astronomical materials to create the super huge crystal power unit. When the time comes, he would suddenly release lightning that would cover hundreds of miles. Then, countless undead would rush up, only to find that this place had become a death zone. Hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of undead would be turned into ashes in an instant. That scene was really too beautiful. The warlock leader had calculated that in terms of pure crystal power, the crystal power needed to kill a trainee martial artist was about 0.3 grams. How many crystals would be needed to kill billions of undead? No, it couldn't be calculated like that. They had already done more than a dozen experiments. The amount of lightning energy used to kill a person was completely different from the amount of energy used to kill an undead. Killing a person or an animal required a certain amount of time and a considerable amount of energy consumption. And killing an undead, as long as the energy level reached a certain level in an instant, as long as it touched, it would instantly turn into ashes. Therefore, the instantaneous power was much greater, but the energy consumption was much lower. This was just like how the sect master used the Naga royalty sword Soul to kill the Legion of Doom. It collapsed at a touch. This was the mutual restraint of energy. Therefore, the so-called hundreds of millions and billions of undead mentioned by the Queen Devil Queen were all a joke. In the face of amazing technology, numbers were of no use. Yang Dingtian didn't know what he was thinking. If he knew, he would also agree. In the First World War, when the Maxim machine gun had just appeared, in the middle of the 19th century, a 50-man British army relied on 4 Maxim machine guns to defeat 5,000 enemy troops and eliminate more than 3,000 people. In the First World War, Germany relied on the Maxim machine guns to eliminate more than 6,000 victorious troops in a single battle. During the Three Kingdoms period, Cao Cao's army of 200,000 went south and began to cross the river by boat. They just happened to encounter a small army of the People's Liberation Army, which added up to less than 20 people and 5 armed helicopters. Then the only ending was probably a complete wipeout, and even Cao Cao couldn't return to Shidu. At this time, the Queen Devil Queen and everyone in the evil ways were shocked and excited as they watched the underground ghost city grow bigger day by day. A few days later, after the Shura Vulture recovered his spiritual power, he summoned thousands of Shura people. In total, there were more than 20,000 to 30,000 Shura people who participated in the construction of the underground ghost city. The ghost city they built was a long strip. It would spread all the way south and eventually form a ghost city that was hundreds of miles long. To the infernal queen, undead concubine, all she needed was time. Moreover, this time wasn't very long. This was because in the later stages, the Empire of Darkness's destruction Earth Dragon and the drilling Earth Dragon also participated in the construction of the underground ghost city. With the addition of these giants, the construction speed of the ghost city increased by leaps and bounds. In less than a month, the entire underground ghost city was more than 300 miles long and more than 10 miles wide. At this time, the number of Shura people teleported over had reached nearly 100,000. In order to obtain the energy needed by the underground ghost city, the Empire of Darkness's Skirich imperial capital was operating crazily overdrawing the energy of nearly 100,000 miles of the continent. The demon's domain had turned from grayish-red to black, and countless huge craters had already collapsed. In the world of ice and snow, the air in many areas had begun to solidify, and the sky and earth seemed to be condensed together. The yin-yang mirror had sunk by more than 100 feet. However, the Queen Devil Queen and the evil ways didn't care about this at all. As for Vulture, apart from summoning and reviving Shura and the undead, in the name of boosting morale, she often went to the underground ghost city to interact with the Shura. She used her beauty to seduce many high-ranking Azuras, and they were all infatuated. One had to know that she should be the only surviving Shadow Queen Shura at the moment. The Shadow Queen Shura had an unparalleled temptation to all the males of the Shura tribe. Therefore, Vulture had gained the admiration of almost all the Shura tribe's experts. Prince Li Ming and the Queen Devil Queen quickly discovered this and immediately stopped her from going to the underground ghost city. As a result, she secretly slacked off, and the number of Shura and undead that were teleported over each time began to decrease. As for those Azuras, without her encouragement, it seemed that the speed at which they were building the ghost city had slowed down. Therefore, Vulture could come into contact with the Shura again, but under the supervision of the evil warriors. Just like that, 2 months later, the underground ghost city, which was more than 800 miles long and 50 miles wide, was completely built. In the ancient society of the Earth Plane, this would have been a huge project that was almost impossible to accomplish. In terms of area, it was about 10,000 square kilometers. Billions of undead would probably barely have a foothold. The Queen Devil Queen led the evil warriors and floated above the 800-mile underground ghost city. She was instantly filled with emotions. It really felt like the world would turn upside down with a single order. Perhaps she had a kind of heroism in her heart, like Qin Shi Huang building the Great Wall. After all, the pleasure brought by construction was deeper and longer than destruction. The underground ghost city had been built. Next, it was time for countless undead to enter the human countries. Then she gave the order. The two pyramids of the Nether Ghost City and the Sky Demon City began to operate at full speed. Then, an astronomical number of undead turned into shattered energy and were continuously teleported over from the Nether Ghost City. After arriving at the Sky Demon City Pyramid, they were immediately revived by Vulture and flew into the underground Ghost City. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Countless undead were spat out from the whirlpool of the pyramid, and then they entered the underground Ghost City in droves. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, more and more, and more and more. With the arrival of the undead, the entire land of broken souls turned black, moldy, and rotten. The sun could no longer shine on this land. This area became the new Nether Ghost City. The entire land of chaos, which spanned thousands of miles, was completely covered by the dark energy of the Nether Ghost. Under this ball of darkness, the peerlessly beautiful dead demon queen floated in the air. She looked in the direction of Cloud Sky City in the distance and said coldly, "Yang Dingtian, the countdown to the destruction of the human race has begun." Little did she know that at this time, Cloud Sky City had become a completely crazy city. Coincidentally, this city had already been destroyed, so the Warlock team brought hundreds of thousands of people and completely rebuilt it as they pleased. For more than 3 months, the Warlocks madly built more than 5,000 mobile crystal power units, as well as hundreds of large fixed crystal power units, and 5 super huge crystal power units. The various types of crystals used exceeded the total of the previous few years. As a result, Song Lihua even directly flew over from Zhongjing to question Yang Dingtian and suspected that there was corruption in the Warlock organization. As for the Tesla coil that had been modified beyond recognition, there were hundreds of them in the entire Cloud Sky City, and there were more than 5 of the biggest ones. Anyone could see them as soon as they looked up because they were towers that were hundreds of meters tall. After this super project was completed, all the Warlocks were eagerly waiting towards the north. "Undead Army, when are you going to come here? When will the second Great War of Destruction break out?" These towers of the Council of Light, thousands of Warlocks, were completely unable to endure the wait. Finally, Yang Dingtian received the final report from the Warlock team. He saw the total power of the electric energy in the entire Cloud Sky City. After reading it, he suddenly felt dizzy. This. Are you prepared to fight 10 great wars of destruction? It was a complete waste. Then, the Warlock leader explained that these things could not only fight the undead, but they could also be used for air defense in the future. And in case they were ambushed, as long as 1/10 of the units were left, they could win this war. Subsequently, Yang Dingtian also raised his head in anticipation, hoping to see when the undead army would arrive. Chapter 10:17. However, no matter how much the sorcerers looked forward to it, what the Devil Queen needed was time. Even if there was an endless stream of undead, after all, the number of undead was simply too much. The ability of the Shura Vulture was already very heaven-defying. These 2 energy pyramids were also extremely powerful. But even so, the number of undead that could be teleported over in a day was limited. It was just like modern Earth. Even if you had 100 megabytes of optical fiber, if you had to download more than hundreds of terabytes of content, you would probably have to download until you vomited. In the end, the Shura Vulture was purely a condensation of energy for the low-level undead. But even so, the number of undead that could be teleported over every day still did not exceed 10 million. It would take less than a year to teleport over billions of undead from the Underworld Empire. And the key was that the mental strength of the Shura Vulture was limited. Every time the mental strength was consumed to a critical value, it would take at least 2 days to recover. So in this way, 1 year was not enough. Could the Devil Queen wait for a year? No, she definitely could not wait. So, she decided to summon while fighting. When the number of undead gathered exceeded 100 million, she would immediately launch the second battle of destruction. Moreover, the so-called billions of undead entering the human countries was completely a deterrent. In fact, the effect of hundreds of millions and billions of undead was almost exactly the same. But even if there were 100 million undead, it would take more than a month to completely teleport over. So during this month, the Devil Queen was completely counting the days. Even the entire Dark Spirit group was looking forward to the day when 100 million undead would gather in the underworld ghost city. Then, everyone would see 100 million undead, like a tide, rushing to the cities of the human countries. That scene must be so beautiful and cruel that it would suffocate people. The undead were almost immune to all damage, except for the electric element. But the electric energy was the most mysterious energy in the chaotic world. It was not something that humans could master. At present, in the entire world, there were probably only 2 people who had truly mastered the electric energy. One was the Queen Devil Queen, and the other was Yang Dingtian. Both of them possessed heaven-defying mystic fire lightning. Yang Dingtian's profound fire lightning was very powerful. When it condensed into a pillar, it could even kill a saint-level undead. However, if hundreds of millions of undead swarmed over together, Yang Dingtian's highest grade mystic flame lightning could only be released once before it would exhaust all of his profound qi. Even if you were to consume the profound amassing pill, it would still take about 15 minutes for the second profound flame lightning to appear. Let's see how many you can kill. Over 100 million undead had destroyed the entire city in less than 2 hours. If I let you, Yang Dingtian, kill me, how many can you kill? Therefore, in the hearts of all the evil spirit martial artists, the human nations were completely finished this time. There was simply no way to deal with the countless undead, other than the sorcerer and the lightning elemental master. Even the mermaid queen and Wuxia had no way to deal with the undead. At most, they could only defend against the undead's attacks. Any of their attacks were useless against the undead. This was the advantage of being a death energy. Evil ways were crazily summoning undead to the human nations. Queen Hai Xian led the last few hundred snake men to the Devil's Sea for a final battle. After a long journey of tens of thousands of miles, they finally arrived at the legendary Devil's Sea. This forbidden death zone was the most dangerous place in the world. Here there were earth-shattering tsunamis, incomparably shocking lightning, and extremely terrifying vortexes. Of course, these were nothing. After all, the Queen of the Sea Hearts was leading a powerful force. The most terrifying thing was the huge underwater beasts here. These huge beasts were the lucky survivors of the great destruction of the ancient era. Some of them had survived for more than 10,000 years. Thus, even the Queen of the Sea's heart was extremely afraid of them. However, after arriving at the Devil's Sea, they did see huge waves tens of thousands of meters high, shocking lightning, and whirlpools tens of thousands of meters wide. However, they did not see a single one of the most dangerous sea beasts. As long as they avoided the shocking whirlpools, it would be fine. Huge waves tens of thousands of meters high did not have much lethality to them. Shocking lightning. As long as they hid in the sea, the entire sea would devour all the lightning energy. Therefore, the most dangerous sea beasts were the ancient sea beasts. However, there was not even a single one. Last time, Queen Hai Xian's expedition ended here. She found the petrified head of the Sea Serpent clan, and concluded that the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire might be here. Of course, the ancient Sea Serpent Empire was very, very big. It was even bigger than the Mermaid Empire. It was more than 10,000 miles of sea. At that time, she was attacked by 3 shocking sea beasts. She desperately escaped and saved her life. This time, she did not see a single sea beast. Queen Hai Xian did not rejoice. Instead, she became more careful and began to search the bottom of the sea carefully. Then she saw an incomparably huge corpse. This was the corpse of a giant demon octopus. This kind of giant demon octopus, whether it was the Mermaid Empire or the Sea Serpent Empire, could not be tamed. That was because they were especially solitary, arrogant, fierce, and powerful. This kind of octopus was extremely long. When all its tentacles stretched out, the diameter could exceed 10,000 meters. At the bottom of the sea, it was a cruel killer. Now it had become a corpse, lying quietly at the bottom of the sea. Not only did Queen Hyexian not rejoice, but she was even more terrified. This giant demon octopus was killed. Then what could kill the giant demon octopus? Wouldn't it be even more terrifying? The further Queen Hyexian went downstream, the more corpses she encountered. Many strange-looking sea beasts were cruelly killed. Queen Hyexian became more and more frightened. She almost wanted to turn back, because this indicated that there was an extremely terrifying species ahead. However, she had no way out. She could only continue forward. Following the many corpses, Hyexian led the sea serpent clan forward and forward. She did not know how long they had gone deeper. The corpses were gone. Instead, there was an endless amount of dark matter. The entire bottom of the sea had become incomparably flat. There was a layer of void between the seawater and the dark matter. It was unknown if the dark matter was full, or if the dark energy had reached its limit. So it stopped devouring, and entered a temporary equilibrium with the entire bottom of the sea. Faced with this boundless amount of dark matter, Queen Seaheart truly wanted to retreat, because she knew that if the dark matter devoured everything, nothing would be left. Therefore, her rationality told her that she should turn back. The ruins of the Sea Serpent Empire in her imagination had been completely devoured. However, that also meant that her last hope had been lost. However, after rationality, she was completely willful. She told herself that she had no other choice. Even if it was a dead end, she had to continue walking because there was no other choice. The only way out, she would not choose it even if she died. Therefore, she decisively led the last of the Sea Serpent clan into the depths of the dark matter. She swam. What followed was the eternal dark matter. They could not even feel that they were moving, because the seawater was the same, the dark matter was the same. In fact, they could not even figure out the direction. They were completely numb as they walked. In Queen Hyexian's heart, she would rather die in this endless journey than turn back. Just like that, they moved forward aimlessly. She did not know how long had passed, or how many Sea Serpent clan had died and fallen behind. Perhaps tens of thousands of miles, perhaps hundreds of thousands of miles. She did not know how much time had passed. Suddenly, one day, a huge door embedded in the bottom of the sea appeared in her vision. The incomparably huge door even shot out light from inside. Although the light was very weak, it was surrounded by dark matter, so this weak light became incomparably dazzling. Queen Hyexian rushed forward, and immediately saw 3 big words on the door. Demon Capital City. Suddenly, Queen Hyexian could not hold it in anymore and cried tears of joy. Demon Capital City. The demon capital city of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. She found it, she actually found it. In a few months, she did not know whether it was hundreds of thousands of miles, or hundreds of thousands of miles. She finally found it. The ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire were really here. Instantly, all the Sea Serpent clan cheered, hugged and cried. Even as Queen Hyexian's enemies, Viper Mo and Viper Z could not help but cry tears of joy. Queen Hyexian was the center of the entire Sea Serpent clan. There was no doubt about this. Her ambition had dragged the entire Dongli grassland and the entire Sea Serpent clan into the abyss. But at this moment, Queen Hyexian was a qualified leader of the clan. If not for her perseverance, the last of the Sea Serpent clan would have completely collapsed. In the hearts of Viper Mo and Viper Z, Queen Hyexian was even more suitable than Queen Poisa to be the leader of the Sea Serpent clan. But unfortunately, when the environment did not allow it, an ambitious vulture would cause even more trouble. Queen Hyexian turned her head and looked at Viper Mo, Viper Z, and the other confidants of Queen Poisa. She nodded her head, which was rare. Then she ordered, "Enter the city, enter our home country. We are home, even if it is just a ruin." Then, Queen Hyexian led the last of the Sea Serpent clan into the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. Finally, the difficult month had passed. In the underground ghost city, hundreds of millions of undead had finally gathered. Dozens of saint-level undead, hundreds of saint-level undead, thousands of grandmaster-level undead, and tens of thousands of grandmaster-level undead. This was the most powerful force, a force that could destroy the world. Queen Devil Queen faced the hundreds of millions of undead. This sea of undead was like a vast ocean. She trembled and said, "The second great war of extinction has begun. The end of the human race has arrived." What responded to her was the howling of countless undead. Chapter 10:18. The infernal queen, dead concubine, gave the order. Tens of thousands of dark vile dragons flew out of the Empire of Darkness and spread out in all directions. However, this time, the dark vile dragon's mission was no longer to attack and kill. Instead, it was to deliver the Doomsday Declaration. It was clearly written that the original Doomsday War was only to destroy the military power of the Council of Light. However, because Yang Dingtian obtained the Naga royalty sword soul by chance and destroyed the Legion of Doom, he angered the Temple of Annihilation. The Temple of Annihilation would let the entire human nation know of its anger. The Temple of Annihilation would command billions of undead to enter the human nation and destroy every life there. This time, the Temple of Annihilation would bring about the end of the world. The dark vile dragons quickly delivered the Doomsday Declaration to every city. Instantly, the cities that had just calmed down were plunged into complete chaos again. Of course, at this time, no one would stupidly gather and accuse Yang Dingtian of bringing war and destruction to the human nation. Previously, the evil ways of leading the way were slapped in the face. At first, it was the evil ways. Countless dark vile dragons killed the most fanatical of leading the way. Then it was Yang Dingtian's turn. His Naga royalty sword soul wiped out the Legion of Doom completely. Many people saw the Doomsday Declaration, but almost everyone only had one thought in their mind. They hoped that Yang Dingtian could create a miracle this time and wipe out the undead army completely. This Temple of Annihilation was simply a lunatic. Selling oneself to them would not work. Instantly, the whole world's attention was focused on Cloud Sky City again. That place would become the first battlefield of the Second Doomsday War. Moreover, the Chaos Times published all the information about the underground ghost city and the undead army. In fact, he even drew a huge portrait of him. In the portrait, the entire continent was shrouded in darkness as if it was hell. In the darkness, countless pale dots were the undead army. Of course, the most important thing was that the Chaos Times had completely repeated Yang Dingtian's original words at the end. In the Second Doomsday War, the Council of Light would definitely emerge victorious. This sentence was quite simple. There were no bold words or fancy words. But after reading this, many people inexplicably calmed down, including those who were hostile to Yang Dingtian. Because Yang Dingtian's words did have the power to make people trust him. When the Queen Devil Queen heard Yang Dingtian's words, she disdainfully said, "Yang Dingtian thinks too highly of his mystic fire lightning. Very soon, he will be able to feel the true destructive power of the undead army." The evil martial artists present were also completely dismissive of Yang Dingtian's words. The undead would only be harmed by lightning energy, and lightning energy was the most mysterious power in the world. Otherwise, it would not be regarded as the symbol of the hidden sect's successor. Only Prince Li Ming felt a wave of helplessness. Of course, it was not that he felt that Yang Dingtian could destroy the undead army. He also felt that Yang Dingtian's words were just to boost morale. The key was that he felt that the so-called Second Doomsday War was completely unnecessary. Now the evil ways had dozens of saint-level powerhouses and hundreds of half-saint-level powerhouses. They could completely destroy the Council of Light in terms of martial arts. Without the Council of Light, the human countries would be completely scattered. Then, let the undead kill 1 billion people to fulfill the contract with the Underworld Empire. Of course, the most important thing was to capture Yang Dingtian again, and let the Demon King possess him. Possess Yang Dingtian, mate with Naga, and become a demigod. This was the most important thing. The so-called Doomsday War was not worth mentioning at all. It was just a game. How could the Queen Devil Queen not differentiate between the priorities? In Prince Li Ming's opinion, the Queen Devil Queen's insistence on starting the Second Doomsday War was completely swayed by her emotions. This woman was really too immature. And the key was that the entire evil martial artist group had the same thoughts as the Queen Devil Queen. They had to win the Doomsday War and seize the entire human countries. This way, a few thousand evil martial artists could have a large territory, power, beauties, and wealth. Prince Li Ming realized that even a wise person like him had become isolated in the evil martial artist group. It was a pity that Wu Yuming was not here. Otherwise, he would definitely understand. Of course, it was a pity that Wu Yuming had thought it through very clearly. So she perished together with the evil martial artist. Finally, it was night time. The Devil Queen's dead concubine gave the order. Undead army attack. Destroy Cloud Sky City. Instantly, countless undead emerged from the underground ghost city. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. In the end, the entire undead army was densely packed like a tide. Like a vast ocean, they filled the ground thousands of miles below. The Queen Devil Queen flapped her huge wings and shouted, "Go devour all life. All the living beings in the human countries are your feast. Turn the entire human race into your own kind. Turn the entire human countries into your underworld empire." Instantly, hundreds of millions of undead turned into boundless light and surged in the direction of Cloud Sky City in the south. And the ground that the countless undead passed through was all rotten into dark mud. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The hundreds of millions of undead army moved extremely quickly. They were completely floating above the ground without any sound. But wherever they passed, the sky instantly turned hazy, and the ground instantly turned into the netherworld. If someone were to see this scene, they would definitely be driven crazy and scared silly, because the shock of this scene was much more shocking than the Legion of Doom. Prince Li Ming formally requested an audience with the Queen Devil Queen and knelt down on one knee. The Queen Devil Queen was surprised because Li Ming rarely had such a formal attitude. "Your Majesty Devil Queen, the destruction of Cloud Sky City is imminent. May I ask what your next plan is, Your Majesty Devil Queen?" Li Ming asked. The Queen Devil Queen said, "Within an hour, kill all living beings in Cloud Sky City. Then, the undead army will return to the ghost city. Shura's army will build the underground ghost city directly under Cloud Sky City. Then, with the underground ghost city of Cloud Sky City as a base, we will destroy Qin City, Shijing City, and Iron Furnace City." The Devil Queen is wise, Prince Li Ming said. After killing all the people in the northwest mainland, Yang Dingtian will suffer a fatal blow. Then, we will directly destroy and disintegrate the martial power of the Council of Light. We will kill all the higher-ups of the Council of Light in Yang Dingtian. At that time, even if Yang Dingtian has an iron-like willpower, he will collapse. Finally, we will send dozens of saint-level experts to capture Yang Dingtian's wife and children. We will force Yang Dingtian to surrender and be possessed by His Majesty Demon King. The Devil Queen said, "What if he doesn't agree?" Prince Li Ming said, "Let the evil spirit warriors, enemies of Yang Dingtian, publicly rape each of his wives and dismember each of his children. This way, Yang Dingtian would definitely surrender without putting up a fight. Because in his heart, his family is more important than the chaotic world. He has always admitted this." The Devil Queen said, "What you mean is that there is no need for the so-called second doomsday battle at all. I only need to borrow dozens of saint-level Shura. Is that enough?" Prince Li Ming kowtowed and said, "Your subject does not dare. I think that the Devil Queen's decision to win the doomsday battle is wise, because only this way can the humans in the human countries be afraid and completely submit to us. We can also completely destroy Yang Dingtian's willpower. This person is hypocritical and kind. When he sees countless people die, he will definitely be in pain. If we don't destroy his willpower, he will definitely not surrender and willingly be possessed by the Demon King." The Devil Queen said indifferently, "I know your plan, which is to gradually destroy Yang Dingtian's willpower. For this, you can do anything. However, right now, I have the final say in the Temple of Annihilation. If you want to take power, wait for me to fail." Prince Li Ming kowtowed again and said, "Your subject does not dare. Your Majesty Devil Queen will definitely not fail. The Devil Queen smiled coldly and ignored him. The undead army flew quickly. Every hour, they reached nearly 2,000 kilometers. At this time, on the top of Cloud Sky City's mountain, Yang Dingtian, Naru, and the others stood there and looked toward the northeast. In the darkness, nothing could be seen, because the undead army's surroundings were completely shrouded in darkness. However, they could clearly feel that an incomparably huge dark power was quickly enveloping them. In fact, everyone could clearly feel that the surrounding temperature was getting lower and lower. The stars in the sky were gradually shrouded by the dark aura. Then suddenly, at a certain moment, a green light suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. It's coming! Everyone trembled and then flew up into the sky. Suddenly, everyone felt suffocated. It's coming! It's coming! Although they had expected that this scene would be shocking. But when it really arrived, the shocking feeling still penetrated deep into their bones, making their bodies lose their temperature. The ground that spanned thousands of miles was all covered in green light. The undead army of hundreds of millions was really like an ocean. This scene was far more shocking than the tens of millions of world extermination army. It's coming, let's go back. Yang Dingtian. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Then, everyone would go to Cloud Sky City. The undead army is attacking, everyone get ready. Swish swish swish. Suddenly, everyone on the city wall stood up neatly. In fact, they had just received the order to stand here motionless. Every soldier was covered in a very special soft armor from head to toe, without an inch of skin exposed. Even the weapons in everyone's hands were extremely dry wood. In short, there was not a bit of metal on their bodies. Many soldiers were puzzled. How could they fight when they were dressed like this and held wooden swords and spears? But the first rule of the Council of Light Corps was to obey orders and not ask why. Yang Dingtian felt nervous and said to the warlock leader beside him, "Is everything ready?" The warlock leader said, "Within 300 miles of Great Cloud Sky City, everything has been covered. There will be no fish that will escape the net." Yang Dingtian glanced at the warlock leader, because the undead army had not arrived. But the warlock organization and the secret factory did not want to stop. Therefore, even though they had built many times more lightning towers and crystal power units than the original plan, but in order to be completely prepared, in the next 1 or 2 months, the secret factory continued to produce many crystal dongli units and lightning towers. The reason was that these lightning towers would be of great use in the future. As for the crystal power units, they could be distributed to other cities, especially to the secret factory. The power units for production and construction would definitely not be wasted. Therefore, Yang Dingtian waved his pen and countless power crystals entered the war preparations. Therefore, Song Lihua couldn't take it anymore. She flew from Zhongjing to warn Yang Dingtian that if this continued, the power crystal distribution plan for the next few years would be completely messed up. Yang Dingtian was scolded by Song Lihua for an hour, while Qin Huayu was trembling in fear outside for an hour. He was completely henpecked. Even if he had 10 times the courage, he would not dare to refute Song Lihua. The result of Yang Dingtian being scolded was that the area hundreds of miles around Cloud Sky City was covered by shocking lightning. Yang Dingtian did not even dare to look at the final total power of the crystal power units, because at first glance he felt that this was really a huge waste. Even if it was reduced to 1/10, it was enough to wipe out the evil spirit army. However, Yang Dingtian thought that if the evil ways discovered the target and immediately fled, wouldn't that be bad? In order to prevent the undead from escaping, Yang Dingtian gritted his teeth and approved an astronomical number of materials to expand the original lightning tower and the crystal power units by more than 10 times. 2 hours later, Cloud Sky City was once again surrounded and turned into an incomparably fragile island. Hundreds of millions of undead creatures surrounded the entire Cloud Sky City, so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. The entire area of more than 100 miles around Cloud Sky City was filled with undead. The Queen Devil Queen once again stood on her golden throne and said coldly, "Yang Dingtian, I told you. The previous victory was not a good thing for you, but an even greater disaster. You forced me to play an even bigger card. Yang Dingtian did not respond. The Queen Devil Queen continued, there are 100 million undead army here. And there are still billions in the underworld empire. They are continuously entering the human countries. Can your Naga royalty sword spirit destroy them? How many can your mystic fire lightning kill? Yang Dingtian still did not respond. The Queen Devil Queen sneered and said, Yang Dingtian, you are not a savior at all. You can't save anyone. The end of the human countries is here. All your subordinates and subjects will die. Destroy Cloud Sky City and kill everything. End the battle in an hour. The Devil Queen ordered the death of her concubine. Immediately, hundreds of millions of undead rushed toward Cloud Sky City like a tide. At the same time, countless crystal power units began to operate, and countless lightning towers began to condense. This should be one of the most powerful energies in history. Chapter 10:19. The Devil Queen had passed away. No one from the evil Tao would ever forget this scene. When countless undead were about to drown the entire Cloud Sky City, suddenly, a loud sound came from Cloud Sky City. Then, an incomparably bright light instantly tore through the entire dark sky. Then countless rays of light suddenly lit up. In an instant, the light turned the entire night into day. It was even brighter than day, so bright that it almost blinded many people's eyes. At the same time, the entire Cloud Sky City seemed to be completely lit up. The huge Cloud Sky City wall and the tall mountains on both sides instantly became transparent. Shocking lightning suddenly burst out from the sky above Cloud Sky City. Twisted flashes, straight lightning, and ball-shaped lightning appeared like a dense net of lightning. In short, countless huge lightning bolts burst out crazily. It became an earth-shattering power, especially the entire city wall, which suddenly lit up with a 1,000-meter-tall lightning wall. This scene was simply too magnificent. Not only were the people of Evil Ways stunned, but the people of Cloud Sky City were also completely stunned, especially those warlocks, when they saw that the things they produced were so terrifying and gorgeous. So when countless lightning bolts flashed, their bodies trembled. They even wanted to rush up and let these lightning bolts turn them into ashes, because that would be more enjoyable. After a flash of light, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. The entire sky once again became completely dark. At the same time, the countless undead around the city wall instantly turned into ashes. They disappeared directly. All the undead instinctively stopped all their actions and stood there in a daze. As for the infernal queen dead concubine, she was completely dumbfounded. For a moment, she couldn't even react. Was that scene just now real? Or was it just a dream? Because at this moment, the entire world was completely dark, as if that fatal light just now was a dream. After coming back to her senses, Queen Devil Queen confirmed that everything just now was indeed real, because countless undead had disappeared. Then what kind of power was this? Lightning energy was the most strange and unpredictable energy in the chaotic world. It was impossible to control it. Currently, in the entire world, only Yang Dingtian and the Devil Empress Undead Ji possessed the thunder attribute energy. Then, was it the power of the fusion of Yang Dingtian's mystic flame lightning and the Naga royalty sword soul? If that was the case, it would indeed be incomparably shocking. However, it was only once, because even if he used the profound gathering pill, it would still take a full 15 minutes to completely recover his profound energy. Queen Devil Queen had found the reason for herself. Then he ordered loudly, "This is the power of Yang Dingtian's mystic fire lightning and the Naga sword spirit. This is the only time. Charge again and annihilate Cloud Heaven City." Immediately, all of the undead began to shriek. Then, following the orders of the Shura Lord and the Undead Lord, countless undead madly charged forward. Then an even more magnificent scene appeared. Swish, 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 swish. Boundless lightning instantly filled the entire world. If one were to say that the lightning attack just now was just a fleeting moment, then at this moment, it was a complete nightmare. The lightning attack just now was just a jumping note. The lightning attack at this moment was completely a magnificent sonata, a long symphony. Countless lightning bolts, like the most glorious movement, played between heaven and earth. It was really countless lightning bolts. From the east of Cloud Heaven City to the west of Cloud Heaven City, there was a total of 700 miles. From the north of Cloud Heaven City to the south of Cloud Heaven City, there was a total of 500 miles. All was filled with lightning. Countless lightning bolts crazily streaked across the night sky. In the entire sky, it played the song of death. Every part of the air, every part of the ground, was struck by the crazy lightning. The entire world was completely lit up to the extreme. Even from 1,000 miles away, one could see the bright sky here. The entire world was completely shrouded in a magnificent massacre. In this deadly light, all of the undead had disappeared. It didn't mean that these undead were all killed in an instant. It wasn't like that. It was because the light of the lightning was too bright. So much so that it covered the green bodies of the undead. Even the Queen Devil Queen, who was floating in the sky, couldn't see any undead army at all. She didn't know how many casualties there were. Her train of thought even paused at this moment. Because the lightning that spanned hundreds of miles densely covered every inch of the sky. How did this happen? Whether it was Yang Dingtian or the Queen Devil Queen, they could all strike out mystic fire lightning that was 1,000 miles long. However, it was only 1,000 miles long. The thickest part was a few hundred meters long, and the thinnest part was only the size of a strand of hair. And the lightning in front of her spanned hundreds of miles and was completely densely covered. This was many times stronger than Yang Dingtian's mystic fire lightning and her own mystic fire lightning. This was simply not a power that could be achieved by human strength. How did Yang Dingtian do it? Even the Queen Devil Queen couldn't think about this question. She had a sense of suffocation, and even a sense of destiny. In the first Doomsday battle, Yang Dingtian returned as the king, and used the Naga royalty sword Soul to wipe out the Legion of Doom. This in itself had a sense of destiny, a feeling that Yang Dingtian was invincible. Then in the second Doomsday battle, hundreds of millions of undead were mobilized. Logically speaking, Yang Dingtian shouldn't have the slightest ability to fight back. Who knew that the entire scene was even more magnificent than the first Doomsday battle? Other than the Queen Devil Queen, the rest, whether it was Prince Li Ming, Princess Mu Dan, or all the evil spirit warriors. At this moment, they were all completely shocked and terrified. Their brains also instantly lost the ability to think. How did Yang Dingtian do this? How could he control this most mysterious power? A power that could completely destroy the heavens and the earth. Everyone had seen the shocking lightning before. Every time dark clouds covered the sky, it would be accompanied by lightning that was tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of meters long. However, everyone only had fear and the unknown towards that energy. It was impossible to grasp or control it. And Yang Dingtian in front of them had completely grasped and controlled this shocking energy. In an instant, countless evil spirit warriors once again felt a sense of powerlessness and destiny. Perhaps Yang Dingtian was really invincible. Perhaps Yang Dingtian was really the son of destiny. Evil ways were simply no match for him. All the evil spirit warriors were in despair. The only exception was, of course, the Shura vulture. When the vulture saw this scene, her entire body was heating up. She was even a little moved, and the space between her legs was a little moist. Because this was a gorgeous scene created by Yang Dingtian. There was almost no woman who could resist gorgeous things. And this was even more true for the vain spirit vulture. Moreover, she had even imagined that since Yang Dingtian could create lightning that was hundreds of miles long to kill the undead, in that case, he could also create lightning that was tens of thousands of meters high and turn all the evil spirit warriors into ashes. The reason why he did not do so was definitely because she was by the Devil Queen's side and was afraid of hurting her. Thinking of this, the vanity in Vulture's heart instantly exploded to the extreme. She even wished she could rush into Cloud Sky City and throw herself into his arms at the first possible moment. But she did not dare. If she did so, the Devil Queen would definitely kill her immediately. Disgusting evil spirits, disgusting evil ways. If not for the evil spirit energy, my husband, Yang Dingtian, would have already turned you into ashes and shattered your bones. Although the Devil Queen could not see the casualties of the undead army, the evil spirit warriors knew that the evil spirit warriors would definitely die soon. But she knew that the countless undead army would definitely be dying quickly, because lightning energy was the natural enemy of the undead. As long as there was enough energy, they would definitely die upon contact. Immediately, the Devil Queen woke up and said, "Vulture, immediately revive the undead." Vulture was intoxicated by the incomparable pleasure. When she heard the undead concubine's words, her delicate body trembled, and then she said, "Yes." Immediately after, she began to revive the undead. She made a decision in her heart that she would definitely choose the undead, with very low energy levels to revive. In the end, she realized that she could not revive them at all. This Legion of Doom was smashed to pieces, but the energy was still different. Once the undead were hit by lightning, they would completely turn into ashes. There was no time to revive them, and even if they were revived, it would be meaningless because the deadly lightning was playing crazily. Just as they were revived, they would instantly turn into ashes. This crazy song of lightning was really long. It actually played crazily for a full 15 minutes. As a result, the evil spirit warriors, including the Devil Queen, were temporarily blinded. Even if they closed their eyes directly, they could still feel the fatal brilliance. After a full 15 minutes, this earth-shattering lightning was finally over. The entire sky, the entire world completely darkened again. Cloud Sky City was still standing tall. Outside Cloud Sky City, the undead army, which was originally like a vast ocean, had been completely annihilated and disappeared without a trace. However, they did not completely disappear. There were still hundreds of them, all of them flickering with light and shadow. These were all saint-level and half-saint-level undead monarchs, undead overlords, Shura monarchs, and Shura overlords. Speaking of Asuras, originally, they were not that afraid of lightning energy. However, in order to enter the nether plane to avoid the pursuit of the Naga, they had all committed suicide. At this moment, they were not only Shura, but they were also undead. Therefore, lightning was still fatal to them. More than 10,000 years ago, facing the pursuit of the Naga, the Shura were not completely wiped out. And this time, the remaining hundreds of undead Shura above half-saint level were still trembling in place. Under the crazy lightning attack just now, although they did not turn into ashes, they had lost control of their bodies. Prince Li Ming was the first to wake up and said, "Your Majesty Devil Queen, Yang Dingtian's lightning is ineffective against half-saint level undead and Shura. You can order the half-saint level and saint level undead to retreat immediately, or you can charge in and kill everyone." Chapter 1020. Hearing Prince Li Ming's words, the Queen Devil Queen instantly came to her senses. Seeing the hundreds of undead Shura above the half-saint level that had survived, these were the essence of the undead army. The countless undead that had turned into ashes were not worth mentioning at all. With this group of undead Shura above the half-saint level, they could still wipe out Cloud Sky City, but the scene might be much uglier. Moreover, in fact, they had already followed Prince Li Ming's plan to use the undead Shura above the half-saint level to wipe out the high-level group of the Council of Light. But at this moment, under the huge blow in front of her, the Queen Devil Queen couldn't care so much. Suddenly, her face became distorted, and she said sternly, "Yes, kill them all. All undead monarchs, undead lords. Shura monarchs, Shura lords, rush in and kill them all." With the Queen Devil Queen's order, the last few hundred undead Shura above the half-saint level stopped trembling and trembling. Then they adjusted their energy bodies and rushed into Cloud Sky City ferociously. Their goal was to slaughter all the high-level energy creatures in Cloud Sky City. However, at this moment, there was a loud explosion in the entire Cloud Sky City. The batch of super high-power crystal power units that had never been activated, as well as countless medium-sized crystal power units, were all operating. Then, the few towers in Cloud Sky City that had never been activated suddenly condensed. Pa! It was no longer fine lightning that filled the sky, but focused lightning. Hundreds of thick lightning bolts that were hundreds of miles long crisscrossed and struck the ground. Swish, 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 swish. They struck crazily without stopping for a moment. Almost every bolt was equivalent to Yang Dingtian's mystic fire lightning. Although the lightning just now was gorgeous and covered hundreds of miles of the sky, but the power was not extremely high, so it couldn't kill the undead above the half-saint level. Now, all the crystal power units, the super giant power units, and the largest wireless lightning tower were activated together. Although the area covered by the lightning was much smaller, the power was much higher. On average, the lethality of each bolt of lightning had increased by many times. Therefore, even the saint-level and saint-level undead Shura couldn't resist it. If one were to describe it in terms of cannons, they would have been shooting all over the sky, using scatter bullets and exploding bullets. Now it was a targeted killing with live ammunition. Immediately, Prince Li Ming and Queen Devil Queen looked on in horror. One by one, the half-step Saint Shura and the undead were instantly annihilated. However, the saint-level undead Shura was incomparably tenacious. After being hit, it only trembled in place and lost the ability to move, but it still didn't turn into ashes. But then dozens of lightning bolts suddenly gathered together and struck down. In an instant, the saint-level undead and Shura were turned into ashes one after another, disappearing before the eyes of the Queen Devil Queen and the evil warriors. Queen Devil Queen stared blankly at this scene, then let out a miserable cry. No! She spat out a mouthful of blood, then immediately fell backward and fainted. At the same time, the saint-level and half-step saint experts in Cloud Sky City shot out like lightning. Prince Li Ming didn't immediately help the Queen Devil Queen. Instead, he used his fastest speed to place his sword on the neck of the Shura vulture, who was about to escape. On the side of the Council of Light, the half-step saints and saint-level experts captured the evil warriors as fast as lightning. The two saint-level experts, Neru and the Mermaid Queen, directly rushed towards Princess Mudan, wanting to capture her. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to capture Princess Mudan, and even Queen Devil Queen. However, Princess Peony's beautiful body suddenly turned into ashes and scattered smoke. She directly turned into an energy enveloped by an evil spirit, and flew away like a meteor. Her speed was so fast that it was impossible to catch up. Of course, it was useless even if they caught up. She had already abandoned her physical body, and turned into energy. The Queen Devil Queen's magic staff suddenly flew out, grabbed the Devil Queen's body, and flew away like lightning. Prince Li Ming gritted his teeth. In an instant, his body exploded into pieces, and turned into a ball of evil spirit energy. He still placed his sword on the Shura vulture's neck and fled as fast as he could. The remaining evil warriors all used the Rubik's Cube. Bang, 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 bang. Countless evil warriors began to self-destruct, turning into energy and fleeing frantically. However, some still didn't have the chance and were directly captured. Moreover, after self-destructing, the third, fourth, and fifth great evil warrior's soul power was quickly exhausted even under the protection of the evil spirit. Therefore, there were many evil spirit martial artists who escaped, but there were also many evil spirit martial artists who were captured. This time, Yang Dingtian's Council of Light had truly obtained a great victory. Then the first thing he did was to lock these evil spirit warriors into an incomparably huge crystal energy array. Even a saint-level expert would find it difficult to escape from these energy arrays, let alone these third and fourth grade evil warriors. Most of those who were captured were level 3, 4, or 5 evil martial artists. There was only one second grade evil warrior, and it was the unlucky Joyous Palace's young master, Gudu Huan. Crown Prince Li Ming led the majority of the evil spirit martial artists and fled in panic. In one breath, they fled directly to the sky above the underground ghost city, before stopping and gradually recovering their bodies. Then, the entire evil spirit army's morale was at an all-time low. No one was angry at all. The Devil Queen's deceased concubine slowly woke up. Actually, she wouldn't be injured at all because she had the primordial evil spirit in her body. However, the mental and psychological blow was something that no evil spirit could make up for. Her beautiful face was still as pale as ever. She whispered, "Li Ming, was the vulture snatched away?" Li Ming said, "No, I took her hostage immediately." "That's good." The Devil Queen sighed and said, "She still has great use, great use. She is even the key to His Majesty the Demon King's breakthrough to demigod." Prince Li Ming trembled. He really didn't know about this. Then, the Devil Queen looked at the pyramid below. After the Shura vulture left, the undead naturally stopped teleporting over. Previously, the Devil Queen looked at the pyramid below and the underground ghost city. They were all magnificent, and she couldn't get enough of them. But now, looking at the pyramid and the underground ghost city below, she only felt incomparable disgust. These two things seemed to be mocking her all the time. Twice, a total of 2 times. In the first Doomsday War, she was full of confidence. She even played games with the Council of Light at the beginning. It was like a cat that caught a mouse and didn't bite it to death immediately. It had to play with it for a while before killing it. In the end, Yang Dingtian's gaze returned and used the Naga royalty sword soul to wipe out the Legion of Doom completely. This caused her to suffer a huge blow. Therefore, she willfully launched the Second Doomsday War, directly breaking the original strategy and using the undead army in advance. In fact, the Ghost Emperor Wentian shouldn't have agreed to her request. However, because of his feelings for her, in order to vent her anger, the Ghost Emperor Wentian agreed. Therefore, she was full of ambition again to wash away the shame. Moreover, she was also completely confident of winning. The heroism before the war was still fresh in her memory. First, it was the 100 million undead army. And then there was an endless stream of undead army. She would definitely win, and her undead army would definitely wipe out the human countries. She had no doubt about this. Therefore, before the war, she made a declaration of doomsday to the entire human countries. Billions of undead army would definitely cover the entire human countries. She would build ghost cities everywhere. She had even thought about how to cross the sea. She would use her shocking energy to create an undead dragon. She could allow Saint-level Shura and half-Saint-level Shura to ride this undead dragon across the vast sea. Then, she would build underground ghost cities on other continents. Even though these undead dragons would never return and would be completely reduced to ashes at dawn, she didn't care. Cloud Sky City was only the first battle. She had already said that within an hour, the entire Cloud Sky City would be wiped out. And the result? After a quarter of an hour, her undead army was completely wiped out. How did Yang Dingtian do it? How did he manage to control such a shocking amount of lightning energy? This was something that the Devil Queen didn't want to think about at all. In fact, she didn't even want to think about anything now. She had already suffered the greatest blow in her life. She only wanted the Demon King Wentian to return quickly, and then she could put everything down. "Is there any news about His Majesty the Demon King?" the Devil Queen asked. Prince Li Ming shook his head and said, "No." The Devil Queen closed her beautiful eyes and sighed. "Li Ming, the evil energy can change a person's nature, but it can't change a person's wisdom. I'm not suitable to be a leader. More than 200 years ago, I couldn't unite the entire Tiando League army and gather them into one hand. Now, I'm not suitable to be in charge of the Empire of Darkness. Everything is up to you. From now on, you have the final say in the Temple of Annihilation." Prince Li Ming said in a low voice, "Yes, Devil Queen." He had finally gotten what he wanted and obtained the power of the Empire of Darkness. However, the 2 trump cards in his hands had been used up. The Legion of Doom was almost completely annihilated. The undead army was also completely annihilated, although there were still countless undead on the Underworld Empire's side. However, most of the Saint-level and half-Saint-level undead were lost. Next, how to appease Ghost Emperor Wentian's anger was a problem. Moreover, nearly half of the evil warriors had been captured. Dongli had also become a captive. Next, he only had one last card in his hand, and that was Little Western Paradise. However, Prince Li Ming didn't feel discouraged at all. Instead, he was filled with endless fighting spirit. He looked at the distant Cloud Sky City and said coldly, "Yang Dingtian, the next battle is between you and me." At this time, in Cloud Sky City, Yang Dingtian was counting the greatest harvest in history. What harvest? Saint level and half-saint level undead energy essence. A huge harvest. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.